Okay, time for a little voter bashing. I'm in that kind of mood, reading stupid stuff I see. You know, folks, everything you see is Obama, Obama, Obama. Everybody's blaming Obama for, all that's wrong and for all the illegal actions he's taking. I want to know why you give so much authority to the president. It tells me you don't understand how America was designed to work. The president is not the most powerful man in the country. Your Congress is. Congress has the most power in the country. If Obama's doing something illegal, if George Bush did something illegal, if Clinton's did something illegal, Ford, Nixon, any of the rest of them, it is up to Congress to bring that forward. It is up to Congress to have them arrested and removed from office. It is up to Congress to charge them with treason. Congress is your representative in government. Congress is there to ensure that the federal government operates within the confines of the Constitution. They have not. They do not. They will not. They haven't yet. They have failed in all regards. They failed in the past, they fail in the present, and then they'll fail in the future. You've got to get it through your heads where the fault lies. Obama is nothing but a puppet, just a piece of shit puppet, just like Bush was and Clinton was and all the rest of them were. Congress can fix that, but they don't do that, and they won't. So I'm going to read you a little bit of what your government has done to you. And it comes from the Mandamus Subversion, which I posted once a while back, and I was shocked how little interest there was in it. Probably because you had to read. So I'm going to read it to you. And I'm just going to read the executive order part, even though the rest of it is very interesting as well, and condemning and educational. It's a legal document filed in all federal district courts and to all sheriffs, and was completely ignored. And it's a legal document. It is due process of law, and it is and has been completely ignored. Worse, not only was it ignored by government, but worse, it's ignored by we the people. If we the people would force this, it would be upheld. Your problems would be fixed. Guarantee it. But you don't care. Nobody seems to care. So maybe you'll care when I get done telling you what President Obama has done to you, and your Congress has allowed, and your sheriffs have allowed, and your mayors and your governors and your police have allowed, and the FBI has allowed. Okay? Nobody has stood up and arrested these sons of bitches, and they should have. All these start out the administration under the color of law, and under the color of law just means under the guise of law. They appear to be lawful even though they are not. They totally violate the Constitution and all constitutional law in this country, which just proves again you don't have a Constitution, and you don't. The administration under color of law has prepared for the removal of all property rights. Executive Order 1933. The administration under color of law has prepared martial law. Executive Order 100. Has prepared for the seizure of all communications media in the U.S., Executive Order 10995, prepared for the seizure of all electric power, fuels, minerals, both public and private, Executive Order 10997, prepared for the seizure of all food supplies, resources, both public and private, all farms and equipment, including what people are storing for emergencies, Executive Order 10997, prepared for the seizure of all means of transportation, including cars, trucks, vehicles of any kind, and total control over all highways, seaports, and waterways, Executive Order 10999. Prepared for the seizure of American people. No, I didn't read that right. I'm just kidding. The administration, under the color of law, has prepared for the seizure of the American people for workforces under federal supervision, including splitting up of families if the government so desires. Executive Order 11000. Now you know I'm full of shit, because your government wouldn't do that to you. I mean, not even Obama would do that to you. And if Obama would, your Congress would never allow that to happen. And even if your Congress would, your federal marshals and the FBI and the sheriffs would never let that happen, right? And if they would, then, oh shit, who's left to help us? Us. We let it happen. And we're letting it happen. Right there it is. Executive Order 11000. Prepared for the seizure of all health, education, and welfare facilities, both public and private. Executive Order 11001. Prepared the powers of the Postmaster General to register every single person in the U.S. Executive Order 11002. Prepared for the seizure of all airports and aircraft. Executive Order 11003. Prepared for the seizure of all housing and finances, and authority to establish forced relocation, authority to designate areas to be abandoned as unsafe, establish new locations for populations, relocate communities, and build new housing with public funds. Executive Order 11004. Prepared for the seizure of all railroads, inland waterways, storage facilities, both public and private. Executive Order 11005. Yeah, this is real, folks. It's real. Look it up. You can look it up on a government website. Look it up. The administration, under the color of law, has given FEMA complete authorization to put the above said orders into effect in times of increased international tension or economic or financial crisis in any case of any declared national emergency. Executive Order 11051. Folks, your president has issued those executive orders. Your Congress has allowed him to do so. Think about that. But you're still going to vote for Trump, Cruz, Jeb Bush, one of these other assholes? Has any of them mentioned this to you? Has any of them mentioned the National Defense Authorization Act, which helps give this power? Has any of them mentioned the Patriot Act, which helps give this power? They have not, and they will not. They're going to divert your attention to illegal immigration, jobs, terrorism, and foreign policy, just like they always do. And you know what? You are going to fall for it. And the first son of a bitch that says, I'm going to build a fence and we're going to keep them damn Mexicans out, is going to, ignorant people are going to cheer, just like you always do. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, this is what's been done to you. Wake the fuck up. All right, folks. Here's Dave's World again, which I call it Dave's World, but it's the real world. It's truth. Truth is what we need to really focus on. Not our preconceived notions, not our opinions, not our bullshit, not our convictions, our likes and dislikes, but the truth. And the truth beyond even the Constitution, the truth going clear to natural law. And, you know, this whole thing goes to the next level, even way beyond the Constitution. Trying to teach people the Constitution, I mean, I might as well pull my fingernails out, because the problem is most people that read the Constitution don't even understand the words that it's comprised of or where the words come from. And when you don't understand or comprehend the meanings of the words, then you don't comprehend the document or the path or the rule or the guidance that it lays out. It's basically useless. And unfortunately, the powers that be know we're all stupid, and we're all a bunch of idealistic, stupid idiots. And they're right, because we are. We're frickin' morons. And it started, you know, we can say it ain't our fault because it didn't start with us. It started way, way back with your great-great-great-great-grandparents just not giving a shit. And they didn't know at the time, by letting the government have this little infringement on their liberties, how that would blow up and expand. You know, you give them an inch and they take a mile, an inch at a time. And since they take so little at a time, everybody goes, oh, well, you know, it's not so bad. And they're too busy with their peaceful little lives and barbecues and TVs or buying a new car or whatever bullshit they do to give a damn. And that is the one mistake that our founders made when they founded this country and they wrote that Constitution. They trusted the successive generations of Americans to give a shit about their liberties. And we don't. None of us do. Very few. And you don't. You think you do, but you really don't. You are nothing but a slave. And you won't admit it until you get your head all cleaned out of your bullshit and your convictions and all your idealistic preconceived notions and bullshit and everything that you've been taught and trained since birth to believe that you need, to believe that is necessary, to believe that is law, and to believe that there's nothing you can do about it. And you're wrong. You're totally 100% wrong. Every single one of you. And what we need to do is teach everybody, or as many as we can get, that what you see and think is reality is not reality. It's your perception. There's a big difference between the two. When you believe something, you see it that way. It changes the way you think. And thus you become a slave. You become a controlled slave. And the bitch of it is that when you're trained well enough, you don't even know you're a controlled slave. And that's our frickin' problem right now, is that most of us don't even know we're controlled slaves because we're so stupid and so ignorant and so unwell read that we believe that all this bullshit that we live in today, not just here, but all over the world, is necessary or is real. And the fact is, it's not frickin' real. And none of it is the truth. You've heard, the truth will set you free. Well, take that literally, folks. The next time you go to vote for one of these dumbass politicians, and I don't give a damn which politician, which side they're on, they're all frickin' sinners. They're all immoral sinners because they're going to go in and they're going to prop up a government that is holding you as a slave. Sound crazy? Keep listening. Over the course, I want to try to prove this to you. And some people, oh God, people, I'm going to hear so much bullshit over this. I'm just going to, I don't even, those people, I don't even know if I'll be able to stand it, because it's pure ignorance I'll hear spewing out of their mouth. And people say shit and don't know anything. That's the problem. They've never read anything. They got this preconceived notion, or something a friend told them, or something they saw on the news, which is probably the worst place they can get it. And then they believe it's real. And they think they know something. And the fact is, you don't know shit. Nobody. Very, very few people on this planet know shit. And until about 6 years ago, I didn't know shit either. A good little slave, Oh yeah, run to the polls and vote for that Republican to keep my guns and keep my freedom and keep my money and keep small government. Well, they ain't done that. And they're not going to do that ever. So keep voting. Just keep voting. See where that gets you. It's going to get you nowhere. I guarantee it. It's going to get you deeper in the hole. And I don't know what their end game plan is, all these Luciferian pricks that run this frickin' country and the rest of the world. But according to the Luciferian doctrine, it's all about control. Is that they're the elites and they're smarter than you and they're better than you and they deserve to control you. Well, you know what? They're right. They do deserve to control you, because you're too lazy and too stupid to go out and find the truth and understand it. All of us were. Fortunately, lots of us are really waking up. And I don't mean waking up to the wake up you see on Facebook shit. You see this, wake up America, look what's happening. It's bigger than that, people. It's not America, it's the whole world. And the whole world affects America. Believe it or not. Because it's America. It's America. Known as the Great Satan. That's running all over the world, stirring up all this shit without our knowing consent. They have our consent because we're dumbass little puppet slaves that run to the polls and vote these Luciferian assholes into office, and that gives them their legal authority to run around the world and stir up all this shit. And now you and me got to live with the consequences of it. Well, it's your fault. In a way, you were trained to accept it. And you were trained to be too lazy to fight, too lazy to seek the truth. And you won't seek the truth. Not until you have this frickin' awakening. And people, if you can listen long enough, not to me, to people that are way better than this than me, people that spend their lives doing this, you will have an awakening. I guarantee you that you'll just have a cold chill go through your body, just like I did, and you'll go, holy shit, and you'll open your eyes and you won't even be in the same damn world. I guarantee it. And you will be so pissed off at everything that you've lived and everything that's been done to you without you even knowing it. And you will realize how free you are not. Because people, you're not free. Oh yeah, we live in America, freest nation on the planet, great home of the land of the free and home of the brave. Bullshit. It ain't the land of the free, and there ain't very many brave people in here. Everybody associates that with soldiers now in the armies. Land of the free because of the brave and all this bullshit. Well, you know, the soldiers, they have good hearts. They're fooled too. The soldiers don't even know what they're fighting for. They've all been tricked and fooled just like you and me. Home of the free, land of the brave means all of us people, not our armies. All of us. We have to be brave enough to stand up for our rights. And I don't mean any rights written down on any frickin' piece of paper anywhere. I'm talking about natural law. The founders were smart enough to know this. That's why they call this the Age of Enlightenment. They realized that natural law exists. The cosmic, unwavering law of the universe. It cannot be changed. It cannot be superseded. It cannot be quelled. Natural law exists and is your inherent right because, and only because, you live. No government can take that away. No man can take that away. No person, no group of people can take away your inherent inalienable rights. They knew that. That's why they wrote it. If they knew that we were going to be so frickin' stupid and lazy 250 years later, they'd added quite a few more clauses to that Constitution. Because they're going to say, yeah, you know, we need to put a pacifier and a blanket in this cradle for these dumbasses that are going to come along behind us and get so used to their liberty and freedom that they no longer respect it. And that's a problem. We don't respect it. We take it for granted, so we don't watch it. I get so pissed. The ignorance, the bullshit that I see got on the news, on TV, at the bar. Oh, the bullshit. You should see the looks. And people, I'm not afraid to piss you off. I'm not afraid to piss anybody off. I mean, truth is truth, okay? Whether you like it or not, and whether you're going to call me a dumbass or not, or whether you're going to want to fight or not, truth is truth. And I'll go eat my lunch at the bar once in a while. Well, most of the time, because it's the best food in town and the cheapest. And I know everybody there for a long time. And even people I've known for years and years and years. You know, several people are gun owners in there, and this and that. And somebody will say something because of something that was on the news about a gun law and this and that. You know what I do every time? Because I just cannot keep my mouth shut, and because I cannot stand their frickin' ignorance, there are no gun laws in America. People, get that through your skulls. There are no gun laws in America. Actually, there's no gun laws in the world. It is part of your natural, God-given, inalienable right to defend yourself with and by any means. No man, no group of men, no government has the authority or the right to take that away from you or anybody else. Period. That is truth, people. Problem is, you're all a bunch of pansies. All of us are pansies. And, oh, we got crime. We need to put a gun law out there. So they put this little gun law out there. Restrict violent people from owning guns, which doesn't work. And all the gun owners say, well, you know, yeah, that's a good thing. We don't want those kind of people having guns. You know what? Fuck you. Take care of yourself. If you don't want those people having guns, then have one yourself. And if they decide to commit a crime with it, you'll be right there for two in that frickin' head. The problem is you're relying on government for your frickin' protection. You do not rely on someone else for your security, because then they own your liberty. The founders knew it, and they wrote it that way. They've said it. There are no gun laws in America. Period. I don't give a shit what they wrote down. I don't give a damn if they won't sell you a gun without a background check. I don't give a damn if they say you've been a felon, that you can't have a gun when you get out of jail. Because you know what? You can. even convicted felons deserve to have weaponry of any type for their protection. They went to jail, they paid their debt to society. When they get out, all their rights should be restored. I know a whole bunch of you people, you NRA people, you Indiana gun owner people, and all you gun club people, you're gonna slam me with this. Well, we don't need criminals with guns. Well, you know what? If you gave up your liberty, dumbasses, willingly gave up your liberty to submit to fingerprints and a background check, to beg your government for the right to have defensive tools at your disposal for your protection, for your family's protection, and for the protection of your property. Just so a bad guy couldn't get a gun. Well, here's some more truth for you. I don't give a shit who you are, what your record is, where you are in this country. You can get a gun. It's so stupid easy. It's not even funny. That background check does nothing other than log your fingerprints. It does nothing. Are you crazy? Why do you submit to this shit? Why do you beg your government for the right to protect your person and property? You're fools. Asinine. It's asinine that you believe that we need that law, because we don't need that law. Period. And it's illegal. Period. It's illegal not only by the Constitution, but it's illegal by natural law. No man, people, get it through your head, no man, no group of men, no government has the right to tell you you cannot acquire any means necessary that you feel comfortable with to defend your person and property. Nobody has that right. Period. I get absolutely insane over this. There are no gun laws in America. There never have been. So, why do we consent to that? Why do we allow them to ban assault weapons? Oh, yeah, a bank got robbed. Of course, you know, we had the Roaring '20s with all the gangsters and shit. But, you know, think about this for a minute. You say, well, you know, we had Capone and all them running around with Tommy guns just shooting the place up. Well, the fact is, most of that killing that went on, the majority of it was gangster against gangster. Who gives a shit? Let them kill each other. Nothing to me. Clean up their own problem. But when you watch shows on TV, when you hear politicians talk about those days, and these frickin' historians, oh God, I hate historians. They lie to you more than your government does. But when you hear them talk about it, they talk about, oh, Capone, the Roaring '20s, and, you know, Tommy guns and shooting shit up and all the illegal, you know, crap that was going on and the speakeasies and all that crap. Well, you know what, people? Your government, I got to say that right because it's not your government. Your perceived government caused all that. How? With prohibition. They illegally prohibited alcohol. Well, you know what? It's none of their damn business what you put in your body. Period. I don't give a shit if it's LSD, Quaaludes, acid, meth, pot, alcohol, tobacco. I don't give a shit. It's none of their business. Oh, we need those laws for a clean society, a moral society. Well, you know what? Fuck you. We don't need those laws. You're taking my liberty. You're giving my oppressor more power because you're afraid of somebody that might do LSD and run down the street, and you and your kids will have to see this asshole on LSD acting crazy in the street. Well, get the hell over it. It'll clean itself up. They won't live long. sissies, weenies, pussies. Let's let the government take care of something we don't like. Oh yeah, here's some more of my liberty. Just go ahead and take it. Meanwhile, I'm going to stick my head in the sand and ignore all the violations of all the rest of my liberties. And people, when you stick your head in the sand, do you realize that means your ass is in the air? Isn't that poetic? That all you people out there ignoring all this shit, that in order to put your head in the sand and ignore it, you have to get on your knees and you have to bend over and you have to stick your ass in the air so that you're ready for it. Tell me that hasn't happened here. Somebody, please, go ahead, some dumbass, type that in the comments and tell me, oh, we need these laws. You imagine a society without it? Well, you know what, dumbass, that's going to type that in there? Let me tell you something. You think we need this shit for a wholesome society because you've been trained to believe it by the Luciferian sons of bitches that comprise the powers that be. You perceive reality in a way that it's not. You're trained, you're a good little slave. And I'm sure when the government reads all the comments on these anarchist videos I make, these dangerous videos, that they're going to say, oh yeah, put a pink sticker on his mailbox. He's on our side. Yeah, dumbass. People, you got to really wake up. Not just wake up like you see on Facebook. Wake up, you got to really wake up. You got to understand natural law. You got to understand the rights that you possess without any consent from anybody, not even the freaking Constitution. What you don't realize, we don't even need the Constitution to throw these assholes out on their asses. We don't need a piece of freaking paper to be free. We have that inherent right to be free, to do what we want. And if you believe in natural law, which you don't have a choice because it is the cosmic law of the universe, you live. Damn it, you live. What gives anything the right to control how you live? When you live by natural law, you also understand that the way you live must not cause harm to anyone else or its property. You understand? That's how you get total freedom. Now, every once in a while, you're going to have some idiot that's going to harm someone or their property. They'll get dealt with. They always did. They always have. We don't need this illegal standing army. We got to deal with it. But, oh boy, here goes the comments again. Oh, yeah, we got to have police. What would we do without the police? You know what? If we didn't have the police, it'd clean itself up. Go buy a gun. Go buy lots of guns. Train everybody in your house to use them. You'll be safe. Wear it to the grocery store. You know, there will come a point in time when that generation of people is gone. You know, do you think that the scumbag population percentage of this country was as big as it is now when they founded this country? What, you know, every few towns you had a vagabond or some kind of vagrant or some lazy wino, drunk-ass, useless guy. You know, they didn't hurt anybody, you know. They're just useless. Now look at what we got. The government builds houses for them. The government steals your money and gives it to them and supports them and feeds them and gives them medical care and puts them in jail and polices them. Are you nuts? Tell me we need that? We created it with the stupid ass laws that we have, all couple of million of them, that are all illegal, and they're not truly laws. They're statutes, they're codes, ordinances, all this other shit. They make criminals out of fine people. I'm a freaking criminal. I drink beer and ride around in my four-wheeler. And the sheriff, according to Indiana law, has every right to pull in on my property and arrest me for DUI on a freaking four-wheeler on my own damn property. You're going to read about me in the paper on that day, folks. I guarantee you that, because they are not handcuffing me for riding my four-wheeler drinking beer, or mowing my yard drinking beer, or walking out to the chicken coop drinking a beer. Never gonna happen. In the state of Indiana, it's illegal to be intoxicated outside of your house or outside a private building. So you get drunk in your house and you walk out your door, check your steaks on the grill, and you're, I don't mean falling down drunk, but you're inebriated, and the neighbors look over and see you stumble and say, "Oh God, my neighbor, I think he needs help. He's drunk, falling down the steps." They'll come and they arrest your ass. Yeah. Now you're a convict, a labeled convict. You know what? That ain't happening to me. Let them try. Let them try. Yeah. So, oh boy, I went way off course. Folks, this is so big. This is where I'm going. Natural law, how it applies to the Constitution, how it affects you. You better start learning it. You better start giving a shit, because, boy, when they get the implants, folks, they're working on them. Yeah, conspiracy theory shit, right, wrong. They're already cloning sheep, and you can bet your ass they're cloning humans too. You can bet your ass they're doing it secretly. They are. They can clone sheep. The powers that be are not going to resist the temptation to clone super soldiers or clone police forces that don't have any conscience. You see? Because even though all the police officers in this country are illegal and immoral for even taking that frickin' job, not because they're bad, but because they don't understand natural law. So if you have cops in your family, start talking to them about this shit, about natural law. Who are they to impede your travel anywhere? Who are they to enter your property and say, "Well, sir, why are you drunk?" And, who are they? They don't have that right just because some asshole with a title wrote it on a piece of paper. We are free, inherently free. As per the laws of the universe, we are free. Unfortunately, we are slaves because we don't know we are free. Learn it, folks. Learn natural law. I'm going to try to teach you some of it. And I beg you to seek it out, because there are people so much better than this at me, because they've been doing it their whole lives, and they understand it tooth and nail, and they are good at it. And it's truth, folks. It's no You have to quit listening to people and reading shit and watching shit that has preconceived notions and false information. See, that's a problem. And the archaeology, historians, paleontology, the museums, folks, it's all a lie. The frickin' museums are hiding the truth from you. What the hell is he talking about? I'll tell you soon. The museums are hiding the truth of who we are and what we are. The churches are hiding the truth. So, and I'm not saying that your little podunk church and your pastor are bad, but they're unknowingly hiding the truth. Imagine if we could go into the vaults of the Vatican and read the texts that they harbor from society. The knowledge that they keep gives them power over you. Knowledge is power. And we don't have it because it's so hard for us to find. Most of us give up. Seek knowledge, people. Seek the knowledge. Seek the truth. The truth. Not what you think, not what your group thinks, not what any group thinks. Seek the truth. We all seek the truth. We'll all end up in the same damn group. I guarantee it, because there is only one truth, people. That's the problem. There's only one truth, but there's millions of preconceived notions and opinions and ideologues and all this other crap. But there is only one truth. That's where we got to go. That is your salvation. You can sit around and take Jesus in your heart and wait for the end. Folks, that ain't what it's about. I'm telling you, that is not what it's about. God helps those who help themselves. And if you're sitting on your ass thinking you're saved, you're in big, big trouble. You have to do something. To be moral, you have to do something. Not just do nothing. So, you know, God, this makes me mad. You know, there's a phrase, you know, evil can only prevail when good men do nothing. Think about that. Look at this country. Look at this world. Look at the shitstorm we live in. Look at it. Wars everywhere. Millions and millions of people killed, slaughtered, raped, beaten, burned, oppressed, all over the world, even here. We've destroyed this planet. We've filthied it up. Drive down your road, look at the trash in your ditch. Tell me that doesn't make you want to puke. What we've done to the earth that keeps us alive to begin with. We've gutted her. And for nothing more than profit. You know, instead of need. It's immoral. It's wrong. So if you're sitting on your ass waiting for your salvation, folks, you're not going to get it. You really aren't going to get it. You have to do something moral, and not just for yourself. It's about doing it for mankind. I get told all the time, you're wasting your time. Nobody's going to learn. Nobody's going to get it. Well, you know what? A lot of people get it. Just because you don't. Just because everybody doesn't mean it doesn't help. If out of 7,500 people that just on Facebook see this, not including all the other places this crap goes, if only 1% of those people, there's 75 people, go, God, you know he's right, and then they start looking shit up, and once you start, you can't stop, because you realize how stupid you are. So, if only 75 educate themselves and then become proactive in reaching other people, and let's say they all reach 75 apiece, folks, that explodes pretty quick. So, you know, don't tell me I'm wasting my time. I get sick of seeing that in comments anyway. Maybe I am, but to sit and do nothing, that's not what we're here for. We're here for the good of humanity, not just America, folks. It's a whole damn world. When the world's bad, America's bad. You got to understand that. To be at peace in America, the rest of the world has to be at peace. It's not going to be done with armies, folks. Now, when the government controls the entire world and the bankers have their central banks in every frickin' country on this planet, yeah, there'll be peace on a grand scale, but there will be turmoil at the individual level. Because you will not be allowed to get on Facebook and do this. I guarantee it. Guarantee it. Natural law. Live by it. Learn it if you don't know what it is. And then keep one. So I'll be back with specifics soon enough. So till the next time, fellow slaves, have a good time.
QuayRadio.blogspot.com, or simply head over to our hub website at SaviorQuay.com. Also, if you get a moment, please visit laboroflovemusic.com to listen to my album, Leaving Dystopia. And remember, live in truth and always serve creation. A majority of folks working Welcome, my friends, to the Sage and Quay Radio Hour, your home for free and critical thinking, and I'm your host, Mike Williams. Tonight, my very special guest and friend is Bill Ward. This show is part of a series of discussions where I will be interviewing friends of mine who are critical thinkers and who represent the true silent majority of folks working behind the scenes to move the ball forward on behalf of all humanity. Bill is retired military, and when in the military, he was a code breaker with a background in advanced mathematics, physics, and engineering. His post-military life includes working with the Veterans Administration in support of our vets, studying alternative medicine, researching Tesla and Rife technologies, and alternate realities. Tonight's discussion is wide-ranging as Bill offers his insights on the level of awareness within our military regarding their being used to propagate a world order versus freedom and democracy. We also discuss the difficulties of awakening the masses and wrap up with our thoughts on the plight of the current political process. And to kick the show off, I asked Bill to tell us about his journey in life, and here is what he had to say.
Well, there's a lot of different areas that I've been involved with, over the years. Well, I started out in the military in '78 in the Naval Nuclear Power Program and studied physics and thermodynamics and power transfer and so on for 6 months till developed a skin problem. They said, you can't work around radiation, you can't work on subs. I said, okay, I'll go do something else. Then I went in the Army and became a code breaker.
Okay.
And as part of that was studying radio frequencies, electronics, all of those different things that are involved in the transmission of electromagnetic energy and measuring it and so on and so forth. And even before that, as a kid, I was studying all this kind of stuff. So it's been a natural progression. Then as I got more advanced in the military, it was pretty easy to see how those of us in the military had our heart in serving others.
Yeah.
Whether it was the unit we were in, or the people of our country, or our families, whatever it was, there was a service there. And how those who were in control, whether it be the bankers or the governments or whatever, they were telling a lot of lies to keep this going, the whole system going. And because when you get down to it, people are just people.
Were you a career military person?
Yeah, I've got 23 years of active duty, and I've got 32 on their books.
I always wanted to ask somebody who's been in the military, how awake are the rank and file, the officers, are most of them awake, not awake, or it's just a mixed bag?
It's a mixed bag. The percentage of those who are awake is very small, or want to be awake is very small, and I qualify that with want, because if you can't set aside some of the things you see, you can't continue to justify doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
You have to pick almost one side or the other of your brain sometimes.
Do you sense that there is, the military is fractured, that there is a faction that is looking to bring things to make it upright again, versus those that are essentially using the U.S. military as really nothing more than an imperial force to go get an agenda done?
Well, I think at the very top levels,
yeah,
there's a lot of self-serving going on, and they become part of the machine that is Congress and the branch and so on. At the rank and file level, it's very hard to even see what's going on 3, 4, 5 steps above you. Right now I'm working as a representative for retired and discharged veterans to take their claims to the VA. And as part of that, I get to talk to hundreds of retirees every month. And I can tell you there's a lot of people pissed off because they see what's happening. But as far as a split within the service, I didn't really see it, but I've been retired, well, this year is 6 years I've been retired.
Yeah.
And there's been a hell of a lot of changes in 6 years.
I completely understand the compartmentalization piece of this thing, It's like because somebody worked at IBM, people think that you should know what's going on in the boardroom.
Right.
or the huge corner office of the IBM CEO sitting up in Armonk, New York. You just don't. I mean, you're basically getting handed down direction, strategy, edicts, mandates, and you're expected to put it into play, to execute it, right?
And that's it. You're operationally executing every day.
Right.
If you're putting 14, 16 hours a day in, you don't have really any time to think about where it's coming from or how it all ties in.
Yeah.
And that goes all the way up to the top levels, division commanders and so on. They're told to execute. And so now the whole operation gets moving.
Maybe you've watched this or heard of her. Her name is Kay Griggs, and she did something like a 6 to 8 hour interview. Her husband was a colonel in the Marines, and she had spilled the beans on what it was like to be in the upper echelon of the military. And of course, she was speaking mostly about the Marines, but I think she was also leaning into the Army, and how many of these colonels, these generals, and so on are completely compromised. That they have gotten themselves into compromising positions, whether through secret societies, through various types of ritual practices that either they were completely aware of or not, maybe not, but they were participating anyway. And so what wound up happening is, I guess I'm assuming it, well, I guess it's a good bet that it's still happening, is that all of these types of adventures that they participate in wind up becoming documented in one way or another, video, audio, so on, pictures. And so now what's happened is, even if you have good intentions, and let's just say that you fucked up at one point and participated in some of this nonsense,
you're caught.
They got you by the balls.
Yeah, and that's something that I never really saw, but I have, and thinking about it over the years, there were numerous occasions because of the jobs that I had and where I was stationed, that there were foreign or domestic agents that were always probing. You could be in a bar and somebody would sit next to you and start drinking a beer and start asking oddball questions.
Yeah.
Or go somewhere and check into a hotel and have a desk clerk or receptionist that spoke really good English asking to take them to the PX or something. All it would take would be walking into a facility like that that's open, you can sign people in, and them purchasing a magazine and the two of you walking out together with them having something in their hand. And that's a compromising position for anybody that has any types of clearances.
Yeah.
Potentially a compromising position. And it can go farther and much deeper. If you look at General Petraeus, what happened there.
Let me ask this question, Bill. Do you think that there is a disclosure process taking place? A lot of people kick that around. And I don't mean just a disclosure process as it pertains to the military, but generally speaking. In other words, there's an awakening taking place, and the good guys or the white hats are breaking through, and we're going to start to see things in a different light, maybe moving in a better direction. I mean, do you see any of that?
I think that when you look around, there's so many things happening right now in all facets of life. And I think when you get a bunch of people's minds together, they're going to influence reality. Of course, that draws those things. So if he and I and you and other people start talking about certain things, they're going to start coming together.
Right.
Whether it's healing the planet or healing individuals, doing the kinds of things you do, alternative healings. But the disclosure, more than anything else, at least at the quantum level, is people are beginning to wake up, and the more people that wake up, the more there is to see. And I think that's what we're seeing, especially when you talk about a hive mind. We're both working for the same thing as humanity.
Yeah.
As a whole, trying to bring things out and make change. And I think we're all on the same sheet of music playing different instruments.
I always say to folks, Bill, that there is definitely an awakening. There's no doubt about it.
Yes.
my concern is the rate and pace of the awakening, because, we have a circle of friends or circle of influence, so however you want to describe it. And so sometimes I think that we can kind of get a false sense of security or a false sense of the true rate and pace of the progress, because I'm talking to you. You understand what I'm talking about, and you understand me. But as soon as you step outside of that parameter and you go to Walmart,
right,
and you take a look at the state of humanity, it's not good. I mean, it's really not good. It's not healthy. So that's why I try to express to folks that, at least in my opinion, and I don't think it's wishful thinking, I really do think it operates this way, that we have to achieve some level of critical mass, however you want to define critical mass.
Right.
I don't know what that number is, but certainly we don't have to get everybody on board, because if we had to, that would be futile. I mean, you couldn't do it. So it has to be a critical mass of free thinkers and critical thinkers, people who are movers and shakers, people who articulate well, people that enable things to happen.
And it's going to be a long process.
Right.
I've given that a lot of thought, and I see between 1,800 and 2,000 people a year. And I know in that 15, 20 minutes, hour that I see them, I've only got a short window to share my influence. I've got a job that I'm doing, yes, but there's still a connection there. And in some cases, in a lot of cases, an instant rapport. And on a scale of 1 to 10, I know fairly quickly whether somebody has an understanding of what's going on of a 2, or they're up at a 7, 8, or 9.
Yeah.
I try to leave a seed to everybody I talk to, some sort of seed that makes them want to start asking questions. And most people are aware when they're trying to be shut down. When the response that they get when they ask a question is a response that is a redirection or to turn off that question, most people recognize that. And so it's then a question or placing the seed of asking why. That's really what it comes down to. Why is it this way? Why are you responding that way? And when you see that, you don't necessarily have to get the answer. And you know that you're not going anywhere there. You move on and say something to the next guy.
And asking why is very important, right? I mean, why is something happening? Why is something being presented this way or that way?
Right.
And that's what I explained to folks. I said, look, you know what? The whole transgender thing. Some of my friends are they're good people. They're really good people, but they don't see it for what it is. What I asked them to do, I said, look, instead of debating me, would you please stop for a moment and ask yourself, why has this presented itself at this time?
Mm-hmm.
As an example, are we seeing Bruce Jenner?
Right. Why the misdirection?
Exactly.
The things that are necessary to focus on.
Right.
And that's been a question I've been asking. When I see something that is just ludicrous, that really has no bearing on where we are and where we're going, and that makes me start looking even harder to VT and some of the other sites to see what's going on.
Right.
What are they trying to distract us from? And because we know that there is such a control organization, an organization of control that is, its primary purpose is to control humanity.
Right.
They can't keep all of us from knowing what's going on and what they're trying to keep everybody away from.
I had a conversation with Ole Gamagard going back a couple of shows ago, maybe 3 or 4 shows ago. Ole's been on a lot. I love Ole. I said to Ole, everything worth knowing is a lie. If it's worth knowing, it's most likely what you know is not the truth.
Mm-hmm.
What you have is some half-cocked, maybe half-truth, or maybe an out-and-out lie.
Right.
As to what's going on. So, and people have a hard time believing that. They have a hard time getting their heads wrapped around the fact that they're being manipulated. I guess at the end of the day, that's really what it comes down to.
Yes, I think that's it, is they don't want to believe, because then they have to look back at their life and go, wow, what happened here?
Yeah.
And when you're kept in a constant state of either fear or cognitive dissonance, it's much easier to focus on what you're being presented. It's much more comfortable than to say, what kind of lie is this? People have a comfort level, and they want to maintain that comfort level.
Yeah, I have people in my family, that they don't talk about what I do. They don't listen to the shows. They want to essentially, like you said, they want to just live in their box. They've defined their life. They've defined how they want it to be, what's true, what's not true, what it is they'll pay attention to, what it is they won't pay attention to, and that's that. And, what I try to explain to them, I don't get very far because many times they get very angry, is they're sub-optimizing their existence. They're sub-optimizing their life.
Right.
They're on a hamster wheel, but they don't want to admit they're on a hamster wheel. Connecting back to what you just said, can you imagine spending your whole life doing things a certain way, and then you realize that you wasted your entire life in a virtual reality?
I can't imagine that, but I see it all around me all the
Right.
time. And when you think about bread and circus hasn't changed, well, in 2,000 years that we're aware of. I can't see being so caught up in a sports activity or who's going to be the next voice. That just makes no sense to me whatsoever. Yeah. And I'm lucky in that as time has gone on, my close family have all been on the same kind of quest, different levels of the same kind of quest, but the same quest nonetheless. My brother and I have had certain connections the whole time we've been on the planet. And my sister went, like most people, through the CNN, Fox News, and then I started sharing some things, and now she sees, well, my brother-in-law's been involved in fringe of politics as well, and big business, and he sees it. So there's always now, at least in my case, people who I can share things with that will give me a response as to the reality of what I'm seeing.
Yeah.
Their level of experience.
Let me ask you your opinion on Trump.
Any of your major political figures are nothing more than a front, and it's a front for a group of some sort. In his particular case, we don't know who the group is. There are so few throughout history independent people in those kinds of positions.
Yeah.
So we don't know who's behind the curtain, but he's got people behind the curtain, and whether they come out as part of the election process or come out later, they're going to be there, and they're going to be influencing.
Yeah.
Senator Bob Corker is from here in Tennessee, and there's lots of people talking about him being an influence, meeting with Trump, yada yada, with regard to foreign policy and so on. And you're talking about a used car salesman. And so is that really the person that is behind or potentially going to be influenced? Or do you look deeper and you see where the influences from that person are?
Yeah.
And you start following the threads, and it's just another means, I think, of coalescing around a certain thought pattern, way of acting, character. Everybody says he's got the character of America. Well, if you look at his past, you don't see the character that I would want displayed, nor do I see it in any candidate.
Yeah.
I never do, whether it's somebody that's a mayoral candidate locally, all the way up to the president. The character that is the character that carries us through with others, caring for others and taking care of others, gets lost somewhere, even if they start out that way.
Sometimes people ask me, well, you put some Trump stuff up on the blog, and and it winds up on the Facebook page, and I said, I'm not supporting Trump. I said, I'm not supporting anybody. I'm watching. I'm kind of evaluating and I'm assessing this thing. I said, the reason why I'm putting him out there, what you are seeing in this process is you're seeing the corruption
Right.
behind, the whole supposed democratic election process, the primaries, and we're seeing how this is really working. So set aside the fact that who he is, just like put anybody's name up there.
Right.
Look beyond him and take a look at the machinations. Take a look at what's going on.
Yep. But looking at the whole process, we see how corrupt it is.
Yeah.
And I hear, many different things on the radio. Listen to talk radio in the morning on the way to work. The guys will talk about different races all over the country. If the party bosses don't want you in there, you're not going to be in there.
Right.
And party bosses are often influenced by, at least at the national level, we know they're influenced by foreign governments, foreign entities of some sort, whether
Right.
banking interests or big business interests or governmental interests.
The whole lobbying aspect of it. Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Get
and that's
paid off. Yeah.
that's horrible. And I spend a lot of time. Well, time is relative, I guess. I have a lot of thoughts trying to find and seeking a better system. And the answer that I keep coming up with is the system is okay. What's broke is the people that are in the system.
Yeah.
And we need to rid the system of those people that are in the top administrative levels of the bureaucracy. Get rid of a lot of the bureaucracy and the organization. Why duplicate what's being done in the states? And if people don't like what one state is doing with regard to their EPA or their education system, you vote with your feet, you move. The problem we have with people who are dissatisfied with where they're at is, for the most part, they're tied into this love of money or the necessity of money, let alone the love of money. It's the necessity and the opposite of love, which is the fear of loss. If they're surviving, their biggest concern is going to be survival if they go someplace where it's better. But I think to revamp our system, we not only need to get rid of Congress and start over there and get rid of the executive branch, which we do every 4 years, supposedly, or 8 years. But then we have to look at all the bureaucracy that's been built up over the last 200 plus years.
Well, that's the real power apparatus, right? I mean, it's all of these agencies and stuff like that, because what you have is you have lifetime appointments, lifetime positions.
Right.
Right. So these are the people that live on beyond, switching the head in the Oval Office every 4 years.
Right.
Right. I mean, or changing your House of Representative every 2 years, or your senator every 6 years. You have people that are in that system. Like, if you take a look at some of the real power players, like Zbigniew Brzezinski, you have George Soros, you have Kissinger, and guys like that. I mean, they've been around for freaking decades.
And they know the guy that is the assistant administrator for you name it.
Right.
They've been around so long, they know this guy that's a 40-year bureaucrat, and they can influence him.
Right, or they were probably very responsible in having them being put in that position.
Right.
So there's like, hey, it's always a payback. It's always a payback.
Yes, and the appointments of the top level, the cabinet guys, whether it's the Secretary of Defense or the Secretary of Energy or whatever it happens to be, that's just a figurehead.
Yeah.
It's that group underneath of them on the pyramid that are the ones who continue to push that 40, 50, 60-year, 100-year agenda.
Right.
And they get identified in different organizations I work for. It was obvious that they get identified sometime before they're 30. And they will be fast-tracked. And so now that person, because they have rockets on their shoes, are beholden to whoever pulled them up.
Right.
And so now they get in that 40 years old, they get at that senior administrative level or bureaucratic level, and those guys that pulled them up there that are related to Brzezinski and Kissinger and so on in some way, they're still there influencing. They're the mentor. I saw that all the time. And I still see it working with the VA. And even in state agencies, you see the same thing.
So it's not even necessarily the brightest and the best in some cases. I mean, don't get me wrong. Some of the brightest and best do get the rockets on their shoes. I mean, they're tapped. But at other times, I've seen it where it's not the case.
Right.
So for some reason, they were plucked out, and they were going to now be molded, shaped, to go do the work, like you said, that their godfathers have said, this is what you're going to go do.
Right. It's pretty obvious in a lot of cases, and it forces the best and the brightest often out of that particular industry or,
Yep.
or that train.
That's right.
Path. I saw it in the 90s when the Army started doing the drawdown. There were 6 of us, myself included, that were pretty much the top at what we did. And there were a lot of other folks, but we were the ones getting awards and helping stations to get trophies and awards. And when they started the drawdown, of course, when you're downsizing, you're not promoting. And 6, 7 years, you're watching no one get promoted. And when they start promoting, it's not the best and the brightest, the ones that should be the trainers.
Yeah.
It's a totally different group, and you wonder why. And then 10 years later, you look at where these people are, and you know that there's still an influence behind them somewhere.
Yeah.
And whether that's at the NCO level where I was, or at the officer level, or the bureaucratic level, it's pretty, whether it's business or government, it's pretty much the same.
Yeah, it's very much the same.
You know, I started off as a kid reading books about UFOs and comic books, and where is that reality today? Because when you go from those and you go to study people like Tesla, you know, my grandfather went to Tesla University in Chicago in the 30s.
Yeah.
So there's an influence there. There's a lot of different things that we can talk about.
And quite honestly, Bill, I mean, I see how you respond to posts on Facebook, and it's very, very clear. You're a very bright, intelligent guy, you know. So that's something I want to bring to people. Let's bring people who are good thinkers, critical thinkers, to the show. Let's have a discussion about whatever. Because a lot of the stuff that you and I just talked about, I mean, a lot of people are thinking about those things, wondering about them. Even the whole Trump thing, you know, we talked about. Is he real? Is he not real? I mean, what's going on with that guy? Now,
Right.
You and I don't have the answer to that, right? But at
No.
least we could pose the question and bang around some thoughts about what we think might be going on, what could be going on.
And people do have character changes. Their characters do change.
Right.
And, you know, I think, you know, you mentioned my posts. A lot of my posts they may be based upon intelligence and experience in what I have, but it's amazing how much of it is intuition. Intuition can answer a question, and it just, you know, it's the right answer so quickly.
And that concludes another Sage of Quay interview. And
How crazy is this year? We have to look to Bill Clinton for the truth?
I've gotta be me, and you need to be you. Just set your mind free and give yourself truth. Now don't fret, baby. It's like a night out on the town.
welcome, my friends, to the Sage of Quay Radio Hour, your home for free and critical thinking. And I'm your host, Mike Williams. Tonight, my very special guests are Jamie Lee and Bruce Hillier. Jamie is a former investment banker and the man behind the popular website and YouTube channel called A Plain Truth. He is an alternative researcher exposing the dark agendas that many in the truth community won't touch. Bruce is the person behind the website The Modern Gnostic and spent 20 years in the insurance and financial industry with a Fortune 100 company, and after personally experiencing the financial crash of 2008, decided to dive deep into the rabbit hole and unravel the sinister agenda undermining humanity. In this show, Jamie and Bruce will talk to us about the Jesuits, who they are, along with helping us understand the staggering level of power and control they possess, and how that influence is used to bring about their world order of total domination over humankind. And to start the conversation, I asked both Jamie and Bruce to tell us a bit about their journey in life, and here is what they had to say.
my background goes back to beginning a career on Wall Street in the 80s, where I worked as a clerk on the floor of the stock exchange and worked up to the investment banking firm of a firm in New York, and then I went to a banking firm in San Francisco, Robertson Coleman Stevens. And then from there I started my own company in 91, a small research investment boutique. And then from there I went and started discovering, like you and I talked about, 9/11 was a great awakening for me and the energy crisis and whatnot. And so I ended up moving up to the country and started just doing a whole bunch of reading, researching for the past 6 to 8 years, about 6 to 8 hours a day, and just learning just these really occulted truths and using my Wall Street experience with research and being able to look kind of like about how the nuts and bolts of systems work to get where I'm at today. So I'm just happy to share some of my research with you guys.
Excellent. Bruce, how did you get started?
My background's somewhat similar to Jamie's. I actually started in insurance with a Fortune 100 company. I worked up through management, and then I decided to get into financial services after the market crashes, the dot-com crash, and then the subsequent 2007-2008 real estate bubble. Found myself back to square one after both situations. I then had a lot of questions about what I was doing and the advice that I was getting, and I ended up meeting somebody who started showing me the real ins and outs of finances and how the banks work, and that's where I was exposed to the Federal Reserve System. I then matriculated that and said, well, if it's happening in this particular sector, what about in other industries? And that kind of got me rolling, and I never really looked back. And it just took off, and everywhere I looked, I kept seeing the same cast of characters, and was able to take all that and kind of triangulate it and say, well, this is a lot bigger than just the financial sector. I ended up really going, 4 or 5 years ago, it really just woke me up, and I haven't really looked back since.
How did you guys connect? Because you guys work together, right?
Yes, we do. Jamie, why don't you handle that one?
Oh, it's very serendipitous. I've had my websites. Tabublog, tabublog.com, and I noticed that there was comments coming in from the modern Gnostic, and I started commenting back, and it was just one of those things. We started commenting on each other's sites, and then we picked up the phone after a few weeks, started talking, and it's been 1 to 2 hours a day, but our backgrounds he lives on the East Coast, Bruce does, and I live on the West Coast, but we both worked on Wall Street. We both have adopted children. We've just had extremely, extremely similar backgrounds. It was one of those things, and then it's almost like we almost finish each other's sentences. And some of Bruce's great strengths are some of my weaknesses, and some of my weaknesses are his great strengths. So we complement each other very well. So it's been about, I don't know what, Bruce, 4 or 5 months now into it, and we've never met each other. It's been online, so it's been wonderful. He's helped educate me a lot too, so it's been great.
We wouldn't have come to a lot of conclusions or come to where we are today. I wouldn't without some of his pieces, and vice versa. So it just happened that way, and it worked out. It's worked out great.
Okay, great. So now tonight we're going to get into a topic that, again, some people have heard about the Jesuits. Some people have never heard of the Jesuits. The people who have heard of them do not really understand the power and the control that they have. Most people have heard about the Illuminati, the Council of 13, the Committee of 300, the Trilateral Commission, the Council on Foreign Relations, and so on and so forth. But the Jesuits, in my view, is a whole different ball of wax. And at the end of the day, most of all of what I just mentioned culminates into the Jesuit order. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
I would say absolutely yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So how do we start with who are the Jesuits? So for the folks out there that are listening to the show, Jesuits 101, how do we explain to them who they are? Where do we start?
The Jesuits have been in power under Vatican. They're essentially the military arm of the Vatican. They have their military arm of the Jesuits is called the Knights of Malta. You may have heard of the Maltese Cross. The Columbus, Christopher Columbus on his ships had the Maltese Cross, the red shield. Red shield is related to the Rothschilds, which means red shield. And they were founded under the Vatican to establish, basically rule over all dominion over all what they call heretics and Christians. And because they're the divine right of God, they have the right, and they put it into Roman Latin law, which we're still under today. Also, our currency is under Roman currency as well, maritime law. And so it's all tied back to the Vatican, which is part of the Trilateral. You may have heard of the Trilateral Commission. Well, they refer to the 3 city-states of Washington, D.C., the City of London, and the Vatican. And each of these city-states are beholden to no country, have their own mayor, their own police force, actually their own constitution, which we can get into a little bit later. And they've just decided that because Roman Catholicism has to be the overarching power that is the representative of God, and since they're the representative, they get to make the rules, that they hold dominion of all souls and all land. And they passed some laws back in the 13 and 1400s, where we can get into under trust, and that's how our Roman Latin law system got established that we're still using today. They rule by secrecy. They're masters of deception. If you've heard their name, if you see them in power, they have handlers. They have people right behind them or right next to them to make sure that they don't get out of line. And those are the names you don't hear, which we'll be bringing up a little bit later. But basically, they've been behind the scenes for a very long time. They've caused a tremendous amount of pain and suffering. Just the Spanish Inquisition is one. World War II, Operation Keyhole, when they sent over 5 million Orthodox Christians back to Russia after World War II in sealed cars with Dwight D. Eisenhower and FDR's approval. And those people were basically either put in the gulags or killed when they arrived in Russia, because they fled Russia to get away from World War II, and then they were sent right back. So they've held military power, and they use it through what they call Jesuit assistancies. And these assistancies are in Central Europe, East Europe, South Europe, West Europe, North Latin America, Africa, East Asia, South Latin America, and the USA assistancy. And through these assistancies and through their religious connections, they are able to affect policies of their own secret ways to influence governments, to influence the financial world, to influence the media, whatever direction they want to take. And when you get into the whole legacy of the Jesuits, you're going back easily 500 to 1,000 years or more. And maybe, Bruce, you can talk about that from 1,000 years ago, how they got started with that.
You know, they do, everything is in a veil of secrecy, so we try to piece together as much as we can. I do want to read you a quote here, which I think everybody has heard of, but maybe the origins are a little bit cloudy, is the ends justifies the means. That is the Jesuit maxim. So whatever it takes to get it done, regardless of collateral damage, doesn't matter. They're going to do what they're going to do, and that's because their sole aim is to accomplish that specific task.
What is it that they're trying to get done?
Ultimately, what they're trying to get done is to bring in the New World Order. And what is the New World Order, right?
Right.
The New World Order is going back to the old way it was, the old world order, which is a feudal serf system, fascism, global fascism, period. That's it, really, and that's certainly, that's all it is in a nutshell. But I'd like to read you a quick quote here, which I find very interesting. It says, "My history of the Jesuits is not eloquently written, but is supported by the unquestionable authorities and is very particular and very horrible. The Jesuit order's restoration in 1814 by Pope Pius VII is indeed a step towards darkness, cruelty, despotism, and death. I do not like the appearance of the Jesuits. If ever there was a body of men who merited eternal damnation on earth and in hell, it's the Society of Jesus, or Ignatius de Loyola, who was the founder, Ignatius Loyola. John Adams, 1735 to 1826, second president of the United States." And throughout our talk today, I think we'll be able to deposit many good quotes there, right, Jamie?
Well, I just was looking at another one from John Adams. My history, not from John Adams, from Woodrow Wilson. Since I entered politics, I've chiefly had men's views confided to me privately, some of the biggest men in the United States. They know that the power is somewhere is organized, so subtle, so watchful, so interlocked, so complete, so pervasive, that they had better not speak above their breath when they speak in condemnation of it. Samuel Morse of Morse Code. The Jesuits are a secret society, a sort of Masonic order with super added features of revolting odiousness and 1,000 times more dangerous. Washington had quotes also on the Jesuits. The Jesuits assassinated Abraham Lincoln. The Stuarts, John and Mary Stuart. John Stuart got an asylum in the Vatican after the assassination, and that was the reason that the United States did not have diplomatic relations since the assassination of Lincoln all the way until 1986, I believe, when Ronald Reagan reestablished, quote, the Holy Alliance that was put on the cover of Time magazine. Napoleon Bonaparte. The Jesuits are a military organization, not a religious order. Their chief is the general of an army, not the mere father abbot of a monastery. And the aim of this organization is power. Power in its most despotic exercise. Absolute power, universal power, power to control the world by the volition of a single man. Jesuitism is the most absolute of despotisms, and at the same time the greatest and most enormous of abuses. So we have just many, many, many quotes of the Jesuit order, but it was never been brought to the common day forefront of knowledge. We're never taught anything about this. This was a man, a Canadian historian, J.E.C. Shepherd. Between 1555 and 1931, the Jesuit Society of Jesus was expelled from at least 83 countries, cities, states, and cities for engaging in political intrigue and subversion plots against the welfare of the state, according to the records of the Jesuit priest of repute, Thomas Campbell. Practically every instance of expulsion was for political intrigue, political infiltration, political subversion, and inciting to political insurrection. So this was all said to be founded back in, I believe, 1540, when St. Ignatius Loyola created the Society of Jesuits, and the Pope sanctioned it. And that's when they're said to have started, but it actually goes back to the 13 satanic bloodlines of ancient Rome, who were behind the scenes that empowered Ignatius Loyola. And Bruce can probably talk a little bit about those 13 bloodlines that put Loyola into power.
Jamie had mentioned Jesuitism. You can look up Jesuitism in the dictionary, and it will say a principle or practice as casuistry, equivocation, or craft ascribed to the Jesuits by their opponents. And when you look at what is called casuitism or casuistry, this is strictly a Jesuit. This is a Jesuit function. Specious, deceptive, or over-subtle reasoning, especially in questions of morality, fallacious or dishonest application of general principles or sophistry, the application of general ethical principles to particular cases of conscience or conduct. So they're always changing and morphing and changing definitions, moralities, ethics, and they're always doing that on a consistent basis to keep people on their heels and really never being able to get to the bottom of the whole thing or get to the top of it, whichever way you want to look at it. So a lot of it is done through very, very, I would say,
it's
very
deception.
deceptive.
Yeah.
Well, that's their whole thing is deception.
Yeah.
So they do not want, they always want to be in the background, and as you've heard before, if you see them, they're not the ones in charge.
Very interesting. So let me ask this question here before we move a little further down the timeline here. Do they control the Vatican?
100%. Jamie, I think you'll agree with that too.
Yeah, and their rulership is the church to rule worldwide, the Pope to rule the church state, and the Jesuits to rule the Pope. That's under their command and control. Vicar, which is the representative, the Pope Vicariate of God, representative of God, comes from the word vicarious. So the vicarious Christ literally means the Antichrist. So what we're dealing with here is a false religion, a pseudo-religion masked to hide the satanic, evil, Luciferian principles. They're all-seeing eye. Osiris is not just an occult symbolism. They're watching over everybody. They have a pope called the Black Pope, which is about 6 levels above the white pope. The current Black Pope is Adolfo Nicholas. The Superior General, this is from their documents, the Superior General hears all, sees all, does all, yet in appearance does nothing. The eye of the general surveys the world to its farthest bounds. There is nothing done which he does not see by 1,000 eyes, hear by 1,000 ears, and when has a behest to execute, he can select the fittest agent for a numeral host, all of whom are ready to do his bidding. So we see a Jesuit order, Catholic clergy, operating as a papal and royal military. It's very subversive. There's about 13,500 priest members who have taken the fourth vow, and I don't have that up right now, but we should read that fourth vow. And the vow is disgusting to read in its entirety, and to read what they're committed to is total allegiance to the Pope. So the allegiance to the Pope came about in the Protestant Reformation because the Pope said, "My word is God," where the Protestants said, "Well, the Scriptures, we can read the Scriptures for ourselves, and you're not God." So that's when they broke away, and they had the Protestant Reformation, and then they had to be reeled back in, and it involved the kings and played out with Spain, who's very high-powered with the Jesuits. And the Jesuits are geographically organized by 91 provinces, of which those 10 assistancies I read are around the world. The Military Order of Malta, which is the Maltese Cross, has about 12,500 members, and their secret society, Opus Dei, has about 26,000 celibate members, and it's headed by the Society General. So it's a military operation. They call them generals. And he has 4 assistants to provide care through the assistancies. They have secret instructions. There was a Moneta Secreta, which was found, which was the secret instructions for the Jesuits, and it told how they go about doing all their bad deeds around the world in secret and not being seen. They are the masters of deception. It's really, after all the research I'd done and just a couple years ago start to get learned on them, it was a real eye-opening to see who was behind the power really running the show. And then they celebrate it in movies like Men in Black and V for Vendetta. They had the gunpowder plot with Guy Fawkes that's celebrated in the V for Vendetta. That was a Jesuit operation to get Princess Elizabeth to the throne. It had nothing to do with abolishing Parliament, but that's the story we learned.
And Pope Francis, the Pope that is out front, the veneer for the rest of the world, is a Jesuit also, correct?
First ever.
Yeah, and when you get into it, I mean, it's also the first pope that has stepped down. Ratzinger stepped down, and it was told it was because of all the child pedophilia. So in comes the first ever Jesuit pope who ruled over the dirty wars. He was Archbishop of Argentina during the dirty wars down there in the 80s. And so here we have just really bad people and their history of being bad, and in between, they're being made up to be these great, wonderful, helping the poor type of people, and it just makes me ill when I see Pope Francis going around the country or the world saying we got to help the poor, while the Vatican has more wealth than all of us put together. They could sell just a few of their underground vaults, and all debt in the world would be cleared. It's just really bad the way they hide everything.
Yeah, the hypocrisy is staggering. It really is.
Yeah, and bringing it, Mike, to current, I mean, we find that the Obama team, the Catholic Kitchen Cabinet, as they're called, it includes Senator Bob Casey, Governor Tim Kaine, Representative Patrick Murphy, Senator Ted and his wife Victoria Kennedy, Senator Richard Durbin, Senator John Kerry, Patrick Leahy, Mike Capiano, Representative Lacey Clay. They're all Catholic, Roman Catholic school trained. The Director of National Intelligence, James Clapper, went to St. Mary's. Robert Codillo, the Director of Intelligence, schooled at Georgetown. Deputy National Security Advisor Tom Dolan, Catholic University of America. Biden, connected to the Biden family. Robert Snyder, Director of Intelligence Program. John Brennan, Assistant President for Homeland Security. Dennis McDonough is the Chief of Staff for Obama. Communications Director Dan Pfeiffer, speechwriter John Favreau. They all went to Jesuit Roman Catholic schools. Obama's community organizing in the 80s, John Kelman, he was a Catholic minister. John Gregory Caluzzo was his advisor as a Jesuit priest. Reagan administration also had their fill of CI Director and Knight of Malta George Tenet, CI Director Skull and Bonesman Porter Goss, Joe Biden, Catholics. Donald Rumsfeld didn't finish, but he went to Georgetown University. John Brennan trained at Jesuit Fordham University, CI Director 2003. Gordon Liddy of Nixon FBI, he went to Fordham. Trump went to Fordham. Hillary and Bill Clinton went to Georgetown University. Senator Alexander Haig went to Secretary of State, went to Georgetown. Robert Gates, Secretary of Defense, PhD from Georgetown. Former Chief of Operations for Blackwater in Iraq, Joseph Schmitz, Knights of Malta, Opus Dei. John C. Gannon and Robert Beardsworth were crucial in the creation of the Department of Homeland Security, were both Jesuit trained. Caspar Weinberger, former Secretary of Defense, Knights Grand Cross, the most excellent order of the British Empire. I don't have the school he went to, but it was a Catholic school. Going to Georgetown, we had King Abdullah of Jordan, former National Security Advisor General James Jones. Fidel Castro attended 3 Jesuit institutions. These comes from old royal blood family from Spanish lines. Santa Clara University, the Jesuit School of Technology out in California, they graduated Leon Panetta, CIA for Obama. Janet Napolitano, who used to be the head of DH, Department of Homeland Security, is now the head of head regent at the University of California School System. She went to Santa Clara. Jerry Brown, the governor of California, Jesuit, went to Santa Clara. His dad, Pat Brown, was a member of Opus Dei, who was governor of California before that. Gavin Newsom, the mayor of San Francisco, Santa Clara University. Ron Paul was associated with John McManus, the president of Holy Cross. 6 out of 9 Supreme Court justices are religious Roman Catholics. Antonio Sciala, who just got knocked off recently, Xavier High School, Georgetown University. John Roberts, Sam Oliotto, General Peter Pace, Michael Peter Jackson, Alberto Gonzalez. These are all names that you may have heard of.
Well, Anthony Kennedy too, right?
Yep. Well,
Justice
Kennedy
Anthony
broke away from them, and that's why they took him out. Peter Pace, David Pietrus, the general who had the sex scandal lodged against him. Baron Conrad Hilton, Nicholas Brady, General Alexander Haig, Pat Buchanan, Alan and Avery Dulles, the CIA and Secretary of State for the United States back after World War II. John McCone, Joseph and Ted Kennedy, but not John Kennedy. Lee Iacocca, Edward Hoover, Heinrich Himmler, the right-hand man to Hitler. Bowie Kuhn, sports owner. Clay Shaw, who was allegedly the killer of helped with the JFK assassination. Frank Sinatra, Sammy Davis Jr. were Knights of Malta members. Tip O'Neill, Henry Luce of Time Magazine, William Casey, CIA. Henry Luce's wife, Dame Claire Booth Luce. Prescott Bush was a member. Frank Capra, the director of movies. Jeb Bush is a 4th degree Knights of Columbus. Shriners, who are also affiliated, John Wade, Gerald Ford, and Dwight D. Eisenhower. I mean, this list, I've got 20, 30 more names on here. They're all affiliated to the Knights of Malta, Knights of Columbus, all of these secret organizations that are all admittedly ruled from the Vatican and the Society of Jesus. And there's just too many names for this to be a coincidence.
Now, Jamie, you mentioned a couple of schools, so are we to assume that there are certain schools that if these elites have graduated or have gone to these schools, that it's a pretty good indicator that they're involved in the Jesuit order or the Knights of Malta? You mentioned Georgetown University and Fordham University. Are there others?
There's, I don't have a list in front of me, but there's I think 25 Roman Catholic universities around the country, but Fordham is located in New York City. New York's called the Empire State. Georgetown was founded 1 year before Washington, D.C. in 1870 by a guy named John Carroll. John Carroll was the richest man in the United States at the time. He was a Jesuit trained at schools over in England. He donated the land to form Washington, D.C. Why was it named the District of Columbia? And what is it a district of? Like a district attorney. It's part of a bigger district. Third question is, what was the name of the city before it was Washington, D.C.? Rome, Maryland.
Rome, Maryland. Okay.
It had 7 hills and a Capitoline Hill, just like in Rome. And when they brought out the Independence Day, the Declaration of Independence from Britain, the War of Independence in 1812, we're going to hang together, hang separately. First thing they did to design their flag, they went to Betsy Ross, which is another false story. And Betsy said to John Adams and Thomas Jefferson and George, well, what colors do you want our new country? What colored flag? Because flags are really important, a symbol of our country. They looked across the pond. They said, hey, you know, those British got really cool colors. Why don't we use the same colors as them and just leave out the cross? I mean, it's just, you get back to the history of our founding of our country. No one knows why the federal government was created in 1871 with the Organic Act. Nobody knows that the United States of America, in capital letters, is a corporation that was founded in that year and donated by the Jesuits with the year before they established Georgetown for command and control.
Yeah.
We are the New Jerusalem. And what they set up in the New Jerusalem was the new experiment. And the one thing, Mike, about the Jesuits I've learned is they are very, very patient, and they are very long-term planners. They have a long, long line of just waiting till the right time to execute what they need to do, and then they will wait even longer to get revenge. They're very revengeful. So when they created this country, created the federal government, they changed the language from the United States of America to the United States for America.
Yep.
And since we're under Roman Latin law, you got to go to dictionaries and figure it all out. But basically what this did is put us under the corporation, where President Obama is the CEO of the corporation. And that's why we have secretaries and treasuries in the White House and in the Congress and in the Supreme Court. It's all part of the same corporation. So when we pay our money to the federal government, we are paying into a corporation. And so what they do, Mike, is they put us all on ships in the legalese sense of the word, because we're under Roman Latin law, as I said. And here's another one. What's the word Latin mean? Nobody knows what the word Latin means. Well, that goes back to Rome. It's part of the way they roll. And so when they created this all, they put us all on our ships, ownerships, partnerships, relationships, scholarships. And this is part of the maritime law, where they created these trusts back in the 13 and 1400s, these SQDs, or what's called testamentary trusts. And these three trusts basically said, well, since God owns and Jesus owns all the land and all the souls, we're going to create trusts to take care of them. And so the first trust was called an unum sanctum and said all souls are lost at sea. And this is under maritime law. The Vatican's called the Holy See. And so we're going to claim rights to them. The second trust, I forget the name of, Roman Pontifex. That was the establishment of all lands being owned by God. So we'll set up a trust for that. And then it's like in a will, you have a pour-over will. They created the third trust as a pour-over will. And so they've claimed our whole existence and created these fictitious characters. So when you go into court on your citizenship and you enter your docket, or when you go into your river bank with your currency and make your deposit slips with your, and then you account for it with your frozen assets and your liquid assets, it's all based on water.
Yeah.
It's all based on us being on our ships. And once we're in this fictitious world, when you get your bank statement back, it's in capital letters. When you get your Social Security card, it's in capital letters. When you see the United States of America in capital letters, we're all under this corporation. And so there's a big sovereign, people are waking up to this straw man, it's called, and they're actually breaking away and going into courts and saying, no, I'm not ruled by you, I'm not name you say I am, and they're resigning from the corporations. When you get your driver's license, it's a privilege, you're under commerce law. All these things are designed to keep us enslaved and to not have, they refer to us as chattel in their legal definitions. They refer to us in their governments as human resources. This is what they think of us.
Right.
Soldiers, the word soldier, which many people don't know, the word soldier means sold to die. And that's, Kissinger called them dogs, and that's why they have dog tags. I mean, nobody wants to hear this stuff. It's not pleasant to hear. But it needs to get out that we were formed under this corporation since 1871, and that's why nothing will ever change. Nothing will ever change until we get rid of this system that enslaves us all under this legalese system, which is copyrighted, and they've owned the system for a long, long time. But with this disclosures now, I think a lot more people are going to start seeing through the veil, and they're not going to be able to hide anymore.
Well, I've been talking about this for a very long time, Jamie, about the fact that we are being governed and administered to by admiralty law. And problem is that trying to get people to understand why it's not a good thing is a very, very difficult job to undertake, because I think what happens is people don't know what the alternative really is. This apparatus that's in place, it masquerades as the organic republic with the organic constitution and so on. So the question I have, and you can answer it or Bruce can answer it, when somebody asks, okay, this is good information, so we're being ruled by a corporation, so what? What does it mean to me at the end of the day? How is my life going to be better if it's not ruled by a corporation? How do you respond to that?
It's interesting you say that, because that's the exact same stuff I get. Well, what does it matter?
Right.
What does it matter if they've lied to us for 500 years? What does it matter if we're under a corporation? Well, they've got us so under the thumb where all of our electricity, all of our water, all of our food come from them. Our banking system, our currency, everything comes that they've created that we are beholden to live. How are you going to live if the water doesn't show up tomorrow? How do you, kids, how are you going to live if your smartphone doesn't boot up in the morning? So you have to be into the system. You have to believe that someone is going to be taking care of you because they've created the nanny state, the blue and the red. Why do we have only two choices, Coke or Pepsi, paper or plastic, or blue or red elections? It's all theater just to keep us from thinking we have power, to taking away the power of our own authors, of our own authority. No longer do I want someone telling me, I own a ranch and I own nothing on the property, but if I don't pay property taxes, I mean, I grow my own food, I have my own energy, I have my own water, I'll go to jail.
Right.
So that means somebody else owns me. I don't want anyone else to own me. I am an independent human being. I am not under some legalese creation that I was born into through the birthing certificate that was created in 1933 from the bankruptcy laws with FDR that we never got out of, and the bankers created the birth certificate so that us chattel would be owned at birth and we'd be a securitized number that's actually traded on the New York Stock Exchange as a debt servitude to the bankers from way back in 1933. So when they want to run up to the date like $20 trillion in debt today, where every person in this country owes over $180,000 of obligated debt that doesn't get forgiven, the more these guys run up the debt, the more our children are owned, the more their children's children are owned. So everyone should be absolutely just shocked that they've created this system, an ownership society of command and control, and that the laws that were made to enslave you. I mean, if you think about taxes, when you pay your taxes, you'll ask someone, well, if you're against the $1 trillion being spent to go invade other countries under false pretenses, if you're against the 0.5% making more wealth, or the bailout, what was it called, the TARP bailout, $850 billion in 2008 that was given to the bankers, and all the bad loans was put on our balance sheet, that's all future obligation to our children. Well, you guys got to wake up, because there's no future. And so when they tax you, everybody says the same thing. I ask, why do you pay your taxes? They all say the same thing. The reason everybody says that I talk to says because I'll go to jail, enforcement. So using force to pay taxes or threat of force, to me, that's slavery. The system has been set up, and then like everybody in the country and everybody hearing this will start nodding their heads, they're dinging us to death. I mean, they're adding taxes everywhere. They're adding fines everywhere, violations. There's some 26 million laws, codes, violations, infractions that they can collect money from you. Every time you see the word association, every county is an association. They're a corporation. Every government is a corporation. California is a corporation. They're all for-profit businesses. So they need to make money off of you. So they need to ding you. But all of these laws, we're never taught what these laws are. We're never taught, but ignorance of the law is no excuse. They catch you in this catch-22, ignorance of the law is no excuse, but they add like 10,000 laws, state, local, and federal every year, now international law on top of it. And our system is set up that if you challenge the system, you have to go up through the system from your local community to the state, to the federals, and now to international law. So they get you in the system when you try to do the right thing and go through the legal process, and it's just one more way they just own us. So what we did in California, and we made history here in Mendocino County last year, is we passed what's called Measure S. And Measure S declared sovereign rights of authority over state and federal law, and that the Community Bill of Rights in our county trump any state or federal law. It's the first time the law had been passed. Unfortunately, the people in the county don't understand the power behind it to declare they're author of their own authority and decide in their communities how to manage their own water systems, how to manage their own communities. I think that will take hold as we go down the road, but that's the kind of action that has to happen, because everybody, if you want to take down the system, you're never going to, they've been entrenched for too long. You have to start doing the Bucky Fuller thing and design something better that when intelligence, higher consciousness comes up, people automatically go, well, yeah, that's a better way. Let's start doing that. So that's the positive action of taking this all and then creating the kind of what I call new visions of much better ways on the worlds we want to see. But boy, you're fighting a lot of programming that's been going on like for hundreds and hundreds of years through the school systems and the government system. So they established all these non-government organizations and funded them all, and they funded the National Education, endowed the National Education Association. Rockefeller founded Columbia schools, the Columbia Medical Schools, University of Chicago. They took over all the education systems, all the textbook companies, and they've been controlling through the Jewish mafia, as some people call it, from that time, the robber barons, to this day. And it's now run by the Gates Foundation. So Bill Gates is into vaccines. He's into Common Core. So it's still the same thing today. They use the nonprofits to shield their income, but then they use them to do the bidding to get on the boards of all these organizations. Again, a corporation or a corporation. A corporation is a corpse. It comes from the word corpse or dead.
Right.
It's a legal entity and nothing more. But then they give it legal status that it has the same rights, if not more, than humans, and it's called the right of corporate personhood. And this is why corporations get all the power, and they can take over lands and do whatever they want. Walmart can go whatever they want. But behind the scenes are the Jesuits. They control all of this education process. They control the government. They control, through their American Jesuit provincials, who runs what and how things get done.
Let me ask this question, because you had mentioned before that it's a secret military order, secret military operation, structured that way. So some of the audience who are just hearing this for the first time, or maybe know just a little bit about it, are going to ask, okay, well, what military do they have? How do they go about enforcing their edicts, their mandates, their strategy? How do they do that?
From a contemporary point of view, just take a look at a quasi-organization like ISIS. That's nothing but mercenaries.
Yeah.
It's all run through mercenary forces. They could be embedded with traditional forces. They then commandeer other countries' forces, all the NATO forces. They're all in lockstep. You know, the Knights of Malta, Jamie, correct me if I'm wrong, Knights of Malta ultimately own Blackwater. Would go all the way up the line. And when you look at the Black Pope, because that's what really also part of the Jesuit order is the absolute sovereign power. You have it's broken into two parts: the spiritual power and the temporal power. So the all spiritual power, and then the temporal power being the brute force power. And you've seen that exercised through all the crusades that have happened. I mean, this is going on. It never stops. I mean, when we get online and you start looking through and go down in history, you start looking just through images, and what do we see? It's just a constant bloodbath, right? It just all the way down, thousands of years. It's the same type of story that we get. So they're able to mobilize and hide behind the scenes and utilize other countries' armies, infiltrate them, create their own mercenary forces. They have just unbelievable resources at their disposal.
So they're doing it through their proxies, their mercenaries,
yes,
through their infiltration of the governments. They're basically subverting from within.
Isn't the U.S. military exactly a proxy? Absolutely.
Right. Okay. So I want to make that clear to the folks who are listening, because, like I said, they don't know much about this, and so I want to try to kind of walk them through it, because I'm sure they're going to have these types of questions. Now, let me ask this, Bruce. Maybe you can help us with this. Now, when we talk about the pyramid and who was at the top of the pyramid, now, in the beginning of the show, I had mentioned the Council 13, the Committee of 300, the CFR, the Bilderberg, the Trilateral Commission, Freemasons, the Zionists. So when we talk about all those different groups, where are the Jesuits? Where are they in the pecking order?
The pecking order is as follows, and understand that you have the White Pope, who's the PR guy, right, front man.
Right.
Then you have the Superior General in the background, who is the confessor of the White Pope. So the White Pope does his confessing to the Black Pope. Now, above the Black and White Pope, you have somebody called the Gray Pope, which is Greg Orsini.
Bruce, when you talk about confessing, just what exactly is the White Pope confessing to the Black Pope? What's the intent of having that process? Do you know?
Yes, there actually is they're actually in the Jesuit hierarchy, and through all of it for the most part, is a system of checks and balances where, for example, a prelate below the white Jesuit can go above the white Jesuit. It's supposed to report to the black pope. I mean, so they go above. They can go one above, and that goes all the way up and down the line. So basically, your subordinate is supposed to report to your boss. So it's a system of checks and balances. So it's like in a certain sense, it's like reverse compartmentalization.
So in other words, somebody who is a subordinate has access to your boss. So that kind of keeps everything.
That
right?
is totally correct. Yep,
Okay.
all the way up and down, and
All right.
that's really what holds it together.
Yeah.
In my opinion, because that's their system of checks and balances. So nobody can get any ideas of their own. Because what the other thing about the Jesuit order is really a hive-minded organization. That's why Jimmy talks about a corpse. We're a corpse. We have no mind. When you read the Blood Oath, which we can get into later, it makes it very clear that you are a tool to be used.
Yeah. Okay.
There's these secret societies, and a lot of these secret societies you've never heard of, but the Freemasons are under control of their world monarchy, the all-seeing eye. And if you look at the true pyramid, which you're asking about, below them is the Crown Council of 13. Below them is the Committee of 300, which is the world's richest and most powerful families. Below them, you got the think tanks, the Pilgrim Society, the Trilateral Commission, Council of Foreign Relations, United Nations, Bilderberg Group, Club of Rome. And then below that, you got the finances. All of the banking system. The Federal Reserve is a private, for-profit company, made $77 billion in 2012, but they're under the Bank of International Settlements, the BIIS, where all banks clear their trades. So when you hear about the Brexit going on and all this crap, excuse my French, for theater, it doesn't matter what's happening because all the banks clear through the Bank of International Settlements, which is located in which country? Switzerland. Why Switzerland? Switzerland's never been invaded. It's the House of Rothschild. It has the Red Cross as the flag. It provides the banking for the treasury for the guards for the Vatican, and it's never been invaded in World War I and World War II. And then below that, you have all the corporations, and then I haven't even mentioned government yet. Below that, you have the governments and the religions and all the media and the schools, the intelligence community, military, police, courts, and prisons. And then you have us little people, the population and workers. So you can see how the numbers just get bigger and bigger as you build it out in the pyramid. But at the very top are these families, the Crown Council of 13, that have been in power, the papal bloodlines, the Farnese, that were commissioned way back in the days of Loyola, and the Borgia crime family that created the Jesuits in the beginning. It goes all the way back, and these are people, these families, mostly of Spanish and Italian origin, are still in control and still in power today, and they have their separate way of raising their children. And then they created the Jewish anti-Semite, and Jews are running the world and all that stuff. I used to believe, and they're basically what's called Hofjuden courts, Judens, Jews, which Bruce can get into. But we all see the Jews as maybe being the problem in the United States, where every presidential candidate goes to AIPAC and bows in front of the Jews, and everybody thinks they're owned by the Jewish. But that's just the front. That's the story they want us to see. Right, Bruce?
Yep. And here's some names for you, Mike, and let's see if people recognize these names. These are there are bloodline families above the Great Pope. These are people. How about you have the House of Borgia, and Borgia actually is the Borgia crime family, which goes all the way back to Alexander Borgia. And I'll get into that. And that's getting into the Spanish Inquisition, because this is really nothing but an extension of the Spanish Inquisition. You have the House of Borgia, House of Breakspear, House of Somaglia, House of Orsini, or what's called House of Maximus, House of Conti, the House of Chigi, House of Colonna, House of Farnese, Medici, Gaetani, Pamphili, Estance, Aldo Brandini. Then you have what are called the Ptolemaic papal bloodlines, which are the top 5 families. These go all the way back to the Ptolemaic Egypt, roughly about 350 BC. Which is Orsini / Maximus, Breakspear, Aldobrandini, Farnese, and Somaglia. And then you have the Zoroastrians bloodlines, which is the Matilianos, Flaminio, Vaticano, Dogali, Solare, Lateranense, Minervio, Macateo, Salustiano, Quirnale, Aguinales, Pinciano, and Esquilane. Now, how many names have we heard of those? Not too many, huh?
Well, I was just going to say, most people have heard none of those names.
Yeah. And these people are, for example, the Pavlicinis. They're still not in the what are called the Ptolemaic papal bloodlines, but the Pavlicinis are. If you look at the Pavlicinis versus Queen Elizabeth, she couldn't even carry their shoes. They are so far beyond that. They are so far up the ladder that, isn't it true, Jamie, that the Queen Elizabeth, before she enters the city of London, she has to get permission?
Yes.
She has to bow down.
Yep.
And it's also interesting that the word "sir" in front of United States senators, Bloomberg, Sir, Giuliani, they all have the name "sir" in front of them. And the reason they get knighted like that is because they're doing service to the Queen, who's doing service to the Vatican. It's all part of their club, and as George Carlin says, it's a club we're not in, right?
Right.
But Bruce has this really good information on the Hofjudens. Bruce, can you tell us why that was founded and what it's about?
Basically, Hofjuden. You can look up in Wikipedia. Look up Hofjuden, Hofjuden, or court Jews. And at some point, okay, where Jews earned the trust of the papacy, they were allowed to hold court with them, and were elevated. But that was not, that certainly wasn't common. But there were some that were elevated to be able to hold court with the papacy. So when we look at somebody like the Rothschilds, okay, they are Hofjuden. They are the Vatican bankers. Okay, Rockefellers. Our real name is Rockefeller. All right, same type. They are also the front. So just to backtrack for 1 sec, when you look at the Jesuit order, Alexander Borgia became Pope, and he is what is called a diabolical monster. Became Pope in August of 1492. Interesting year, correct? 1492?
Yeah.
All right. His grandson carried on and also financed the founding of Ignatius Loyola, actually in 1534. But all this really stems from the Spanish Inquisition.
Let me ask this, because I'm still kind of digging into one aspect of this, and I'm not sure that we've really answered the question, and I'm doing it for the audience and for myself, quite honestly. Now, when we talked about all the names that you gave us, Bruce, these families, are they Jesuits, or did those families create the Jesuits? In other words, I'm trying to figure out which came first, or are they one and the same?
They're working as one and the same. Certainly the 5 Ptolemaic bloodline families, that's Farnese, Somaglia, Breakspear, Orsini, Aldobrandini, well, they go way back to Egypt. So, however, they have certainly stayed out of the limelight, that's for sure. So they do have that. Remember I said the checks and balances in the Jesuit order where the subordinate can go to the superior and skip over one?
Yeah.
They are still involved when the superior general is going to make a decision, or they're going to do something. It is then brought to from what I understand, to the papal bloodlines, top 5 families, and through the 13 what are called Zoroastrian bloodlines, and then they shoot it back down to the superior general, or the great, and that's adjudicated through the great pope.
Okay, so essentially, if I understand this correctly, they're connected at the hip, right? So,
absolutely.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
I was trying to understand if the Jesuits were subservient to a particular group. In other words, they're taking orders. They're very high up the pyramid, but there's somebody above them. They're working together.
They are working together, and as you know, with some of your previous guests, studying some of the works of Anatoly Fomenko about the Jesuits and maybe some time dilation where history has been, they're masters of rewriting history. Obviously, George Orwell said,
yes,
"You controls the past, controls the present." But do we really know for sure? No. I mean, how do we really know? They're so steeped in secrecy and intrigue. We really don't know. This is through combing through a lot of stuff and looking for similarities, looking for commonalities, trying to triangulate things. But that seems to be the pecking order as far as I know.
Well, and the point I want to get across to the audience, and the reason why I'm really dogging this, is the audience needs to understand the importance of the Jesuits. It's not just a word, a name. It's not just 4 or 5 people. It's not some fringe organization or entity that's out there that every once in a while pages in, pages out. I'm trying to drive the point home that this is something that we really have to pay attention to.
Yes, and the Jesuits in their most despotic form is a fascist government. It's a fascist. They want a fascist one world government where there's 0.5% controlling all the peasants and no middle class. Period. And isn't that exactly what Protestantism was against?
Yeah.
And that's why the Protestant Reformation was such a big deal. And as Jamie alluded to prior, that they were not going to bow down to Catholic Rome, and it was not going to happen. So they had to bring it. They needed to bring in the Jesuits to quell, and that was called the Counter-Reformation.
Yeah, and you know what? You can see it today, right? You can see the destruction of the middle class. You can see that there's going to be an elite class, and then there's going to be the serfs.
Well, let's bring it all the way forward now. That is exactly what Obamacare is meant to do.
Yeah, that's right.
Disembowel the middle class. And it was Protestantism that talked about the absolute importance of a middle class, that anybody can become something, that you don't have to be in a feudal serf relationship. Because that's exactly what the New World Order is. It's actually going back to the way it was, going back, back to Babylon.
The Vatican is not, it's a solar cult. They have their religion on a sun day. If you look at all their symbolism, they're all solar culted symbolisms. They were ruled by the Luciferian principle, the light bearer. And so they've got us believing that Sunday is their religious day for Jesus, when in fact that's the Saturday, the Sabbath.
Right.
So they've changed it all up, but since nobody questions anything anymore, I mean, we have no anti-war protest movement anymore in this country. The protest that the Protestant name comes from, the Protestants aren't protesting anymore. They haven't risen up. But this might be a good time to really lay into the real meat behind their creation. They create the feminine divine. They create the Isis in order to destroy her. They have to have the male dominant principle destroy the female principle, because the male is the seed and the female is the receptive. And since I'm the seed, I'm the creator of life, I must destroy you. So they play these games over long periods of time. World War I, Stalin was a Jesuit. He was handled by a Jesuit. Lenin, when he came over with Trotsky, he was trained in the Bronx. He ran a Jesuit newspaper in the Bronx. They put him in sealed trains and ran over to Russia with $5 million of gold, and that's when they started World War I. So that was a communist introduction and a test. World War II, Himmler was Black Pope. He assassinated the other Black Pope. They didn't have a Black Pope for a while, but he took over power. He was the one that worked with Rome. They foist these wars, and then they play both sides of it. And if you go back in time, they fomented the first 30 Years' War in Central Europe in 1618 to 1648. They killed over 150,000 Irish Protestants in 1641 to 1649. 1685, they killed over 500,000 French Protestant Huguenots. They were behind the French Revolution. In Croatia during World War
with Napoleon as their hammer, right?
Right, and when he turned on them, it's when they exiled him. And in Croatia, the Croatian War, the Catholic state, over 700,000 men and women and children perished. And Mike, I think I was listening in one of your shows where you read that the Fourth Vow of the Jesuits.
That was Cara St. Louis, yeah.
So this is just part of their oath they take in what's called the Fourth Vow. And just like the Freemasons, where the first three degrees are very humanitarian and help all and really do well, if you look at the oath of the Freemasons, it dovetails perfectly with many of the other oaths that are taken in these secret societies, but they all come from this one oath of the Jesuits. And the part of it goes like this, quote, "I furthermore promise and declare that I will, when opportunity present, make and wage relentless war, secret or openly, against all heretics, Protestants, and liberals, as I am directed to do so, to exterminate them from the face of the whole earth, and that I will spare neither age, sex, or condition, and that I will hang, waste, boil, flay, strangle, and bury alive these infamous heretics, rip up their stomachs and wombs of their women, and crush their infants' heads against the walls in order to annihilate forever their execrable race. That when the same cannot be done openly, I will secretly use the poisoned cup, the strangulating cord, the steel of the poniard, or the leaden bullet, regardless of the honor of rank, dignity, or authority of the person or persons, whatever may be their condition in life, either public or private, as I at any time may be directed to do so by the agent of the Pope or superior of the Brotherhood of the Holy Faith of the Society of Jesus. In confirmation of which I hereby dedicate my life, soul, and all corporal powers, and with the dagger which I now receive, I will subscribe my name written in my blood in testimony thereof, and should I prove false or weaken in my determination, may my brethren and fellow soldiers of the militia of the Pope cut off my hands and feet and my throat, and cut my throat from ear to ear, my belly opened and sulfur burned therein, and with all the punishment that can be inflicted upon me on earth, and my soul shall be tortured by demons in eternal hell forever.
Awesome.
Lovely, right?
It's great.
That they dedicate their life to the Pope, and they become agents, and they will do whatever the Pope tells them to do without question. That's their blood oath.
Yeah, you know, it's funny. I was in a show recently with Sophia Smallstorm. We were talking about why evil seems to prevail. And I had said to her, I was asked this question several years ago, and I had said that the reason why good has a problem or difficulty overcoming evil is because evil knows no boundaries, whereas good and love has boundaries. There's a certain point where good people, they won't go there. Evil will go there plus some. And you know what you just read there, Jamie, I mean, is a perfect example of what's going on. It's the mindset. You know, it's and by the way, in Freemasonry, I think they call their oaths obligations.
Right.
Right? Which means they're obligated to do these things. So it's very difficult for people to get their heads wrapped around that people actually operate this way, think this way, believe this way. This is why we have one heck of a problem ahead of us to turn the ship around, because many, many people will just listen to what you just read and it'll go, nah.
Well, and I don't give them a hall pass on this, Mike, because the information now in the information age, if you read about the Vatican and child pedophilia, you read about all the pedophilia going on. Dennis Hassert just got child pedophilia charges. That's how they rule. They get all of the officials in, they get them subjected to these compromising positions. Look at Bill Clinton before he got into office. Right. So they hold videotapes. They hold, and it's very elaborate how they bring them into the system, and they do the next thing and the next thing, and just make them so committed that for them to step out of line, they can take them out of office just like they did General Petraeus. So the information's out there. I mean, it's all over the news if you choose to see. But what I'm seeing in my friends and family and people I care about, they're choosing not to see. They're choosing not to believe that people can be this evil. And getting to your point, you make an excellent, excellent point. We have to play by cosmic rules if we want to ascend to higher consciousness and our true nature, as I believe we're co-creators with God. And if we do that, we can't be lying. We can't be stealing. We can't be killing. We can't be doing all these things. They can do whatever they want. They have no rules. The more they can inflict terror, the more they can inflict harm, the more they can do blood sacrifice rituals, the more power they get from the energy that is created by all of us in fear. They create all these fear, false flag events, and if you're on fear all the time, you're back on your heels.
Right.
Well, if you're back on your heels, how easy it for you to take your finger and just knock them off. And so that's why they're creating all these false flags events for the big takeover. And the big takeover, World War I was about, the first thing I talked about was communism, and Nazi Germany was country communism. This was an experiment that they did, and getting back to Washington, D.C., it was called the New Birthing of Jerusalem, the new creation of America. And can you name the two states on each side of Washington, D.C.? There's two states on each side of their new Jerusalem they created is the Virgin Mary, Virginia and Maryland. This is all a big experiment to these guys. They have in the Vatican hanging the Kennedy assassination with Kennedy lumped over in his car. They have that hanging in the Vatican. They know no bounds. They know no rules. And for us to play by the rules, it's a lot harder for us because we have to do the right thing. We have to live up to the standards we want to create for the better world we wish to see for our children.
Right.
It's great battle, and I believe we're brought here to fight this battle right now. But boy, it's sure daunting to go up, understand the forces we're up against and these kind of pledges they take for, just doing the show. One of us could be outed for that. It's just, that's the way they work. But it's got to get out, and if it's not going to be me, who's it going to be? So I'm just honored to be able to share this information with people. Being enlightened isn't seeking light, it's shining light into the darkness. And I feel so much more empowered and alive now that I've discovered these hidden truths, where others feel it's disempowering, they become numb, and they just simply don't want, their lives are too busy, or who are you to be telling me this? And they're always attack you. They do the ad hominem attacks instead of just going to my website. Just read the article for yourself. I'm just trying to share. I'm just trying to bring you this information that I spend 8 hours a day and reading thousands of books to get learned on. And I'm just trying to share it with you guys because I love you. And to get back from them all this grief and accusations and attacks, it's just part of the game. It's just what we have to do. And I'm glad you guys are doing it because, if not us, who's going to do it, right?
Well, what they don't realize is they're enabling. They don't think they are. That's the funny thing, right? There's this really weird dynamic that takes place. They don't think they're enabling what's going on in the world, all the evil and all the dysfunction, but by doing what our family members and our friends are doing, which essentially is, look, go away. I don't want to know about this. They're helping to put the agenda in place. I was having lunch about a week ago with two friends, and one of the guys is a geoengineering activist here in North Carolina. Good guy. And, we're eating lunch, and he says to me, hey, Mike, I'm doing everything I can to awaken people. And it doesn't seem to be making a dent. It doesn't seem to be making a difference. He was saying the same thing that we're saying, that all he gets is a bunch of grief and ridiculed by family members and friends for calling out the obvious, right, the spraying. And he says to me, what are your thoughts on that? I said, you just keep going. That's it, okay? We may never see the change that we want to see in our lifetimes, but we have to keep going. I said, what's the alternative? To go back to make-believe land, a fantasy world? I mean, right, fake reality, and make-believe that... Yeah, exactly,
Once the box is open, how are you going to go back in the box?
Exactly.
It's like...
Well, but also that they can't unhear. And once you speak, they can't unhear what you said. And so I'm just presenting information, and I call it the echo effect. And a lot of people have this conversation when they get into the truth movement. Well, they aren't getting it, and they aren't understanding it. I don't think that's the work now. I think the work is an inward journey to see if you get it, if you understand. And so then it becomes how to put it out in the right way so that you're presenting the information, but don't worry about what comes back. Don't worry if they're getting it. Because what Bruce and I are seeing now in this truth movement, now that we're 10 years into it or so, we're seeing memes coming up. Like we've started posting on the Jesuits about what, Bruce, 4 or 5 months ago, 6 months ago?
Yep.
We're seeing articles being picked up, other sites picking up Jesuit stories. Jesuit, not the Jews, is now becoming a theme around many of the alternative articles. And it's interesting, there's a lot of alternative news sites, like we were talking about earlier, will not talk to the Jesuits. They will not talk about, they'll talk about Jews all day, but you send them a bunch of articles about Father Jorge Lemaitre, the founder of the Big Bang Theory. Anybody want to talk about that? Which an MIT professor and also a Jesuit was on CNN the other day espousing the wonderfulness of a Jesuit priest that created the Big Bang Theory. Again, people don't want to hear it. They don't want to hear that 30 craters on the moon were named after Jesuits. They don't want to hear this ballad I just read that's so disgusting. We're in this what I call run to numb. And so by numbing with the bread and circuses, by putting on the football game or getting on your device and tapping, it's escapism, and that's exactly what they want. Yeah. They don't want us to get empowered by being our total self of the higher consciousness beings that could wipe them out in a second if we ever got together and organized. That's what they're afraid of. They're afraid of us shining light like this. So it's just about putting it out there in the right way and speaking and not holding our loved ones accountable for getting it or not getting it, because it's happening. I'm encouraged. I'm not hopeful. I'm encouraged that change is coming, but it won't be in my lifetime. We're just starting to turn the wheel of the Titanic away from the iceberg. We're the ones that just first grabbed the steering wheel and went, holy crap. And so we have to honor that we're just breaking the wind now, and it's the toughest work you can possibly have. But it's also, I think, the most spiritual work, and that's why I say it has to resonate with you inside, not so much with how others react and respond to what you're presenting to them.
It's funny, it reminds me of the book title. I interviewed James Perloff, I guess about 2 years ago, but Truth is a Lonely Warrior.
Yep.
How true is that?
Well, and you look at all the great people, not to compare any of us with some of these great people like Da Vinci and whatnot, but they died lonely paupers. They were misunderstood. They were ridiculed. They didn't get discovered until much later. So our legacy may turn out to be, well, we brought this information, others picked up on it, started a movement, whatever. But it's not for the headlines. It's not for your own ego. This is real work of really hard work. I went through illness. Bruce has gone through illness. There really is what's called the dark night of the soul. It really is having to go on a spiritual journey of the Kubler-Ross of first you're in denial, then you're in pleading and begging that the world isn't going to change the way you're hearing about now. You want to keep it the way it is. And then you finally have to go into the dark night of the soul and really feel what it's like to understand what a great loss that we have upon us right now, what a loss it is for our children, what a loss it is for the environment that's getting destroyed from geoengineering and the crapification of food, that they won't even tell us what's in food, the whole toxicity of our world, and nobody that wants to engage. And I just think it's that numbing factor where they just look, it's not in my backyard yet, so everything's still okay.
Right.
But we're a nation of debt, and once somebody owns your debt, you're in what they call debt servitude. And I, for one, am not going to be beholden to these guys, and I will fight to the death to be the author of my own authority, and I will be my own person. And I think that's where it comes down to. You have to draw a line, and you have to decide that, this is where I stand, and you're not going to own my ass.
Because, like Jamie says, it happens to the other guy. It never happened. Of course, the other guy says it happens to the other guy, which makes you what? The other guy.
Right.
Until you're personally affected by it. I was just helping my sister. She's been ill. It's just up in the Boston area this past weekend. I have a brother-in-law, and a year and a half ago, all he cared about was Washington Redskins and his job, and that was it. And he'd just sit there in front of the television and just soak it right into the optic nerve. I go up and see him this weekend, and it was like an epiphany. And he's like, Bruce, he goes, all the things you've been telling your sister, he goes, I cannot believe it. He goes, I can never go back. He goes, you don't know what you've done to me. I said, I don't know. Did I let you go? Did I get you out of Tartarus? I'm looking at a quote. I'm looking at a Jesuit maxim right now, just to get back to one thing that you guys had alluded to, and I wanted to just pipe in about because this just drives me. Makes me ill is pedophilia aspect of it. And here's a Jesuit maxim: give me the child for the first 7 years, and I'll give you the man.
Yeah.
Jesuit maxim. And then I had an article talking about, it's called "In the House of the Strong Man, Sodomy is the Key," starting at 3 years old. And this is what these people do. And they control people and traumatize them and create mind control slaves using very perverse pedophilia as one aspect of it, and to gain control over these people. And then at that age, what kind of discernment do you have? You then become a slave to it.
Yeah. Well, let me ask this question. Alternative research community, the truth movement, right? We talked about this before we got started with the show earlier this afternoon. And you guys had a very good point where a lot of information is being leaked out. Even the pedophilia groups, when you think about it, right? Especially coming out of Europe, coming out of the UK. And there's many other things that are just kind of coming out now. Now, a lot of people believe that these things are coming out because the truth is coming out. Others will say that nothing comes out unless these guys put it out. So what is your opinion on where we're at with that type of scenario? Is it coming out because you can't hold the truth back, or is it coming out because they're allowing it to come out, and by allowing it to come out, allows them to further manipulate and to adjust their game.
Well, I guess we should do a little Gallup poll here, a mini Gallup poll here. I would say that anything that gets out into the domain is because they put it out there.
Yeah, they create the memes like the new transgender. You know, that's the new meme that we all talk about. It's fascinating to watch how control they are of all of our lives with the news. We all get the news from one feed, basically. So they can control, they've owned the press for a very long time, since Luce, the Knights of Malta guy, owned Time Magazine and Life Magazine, Look Magazine. There used to be 3 TV stations, ABC, CBS, and NBC, but they're still owned now. There's thousands of them, but they're still owned by the same players. Nothing gets out unless they want them to. They have the power to shut down internets. They have the power to cancel sites. They have the power to change the narrative. But I do see from some of the information we're doing, they are responding to us. I'm sure you found in your website you get the shills and the trolls and the disinfo agents. And they're very easy to spot because they never deal with the information presented. They always either attack you or present alternative information. So we're having an impact. The internet is really great for bringing the information. I'm seeing a lot of 20 and 30-year-olds coming online, and they haven't drank the Kool-Aid like we did growing up. And they're more open to hearing this information. They're more open to investigating. They're not surprised that this stuff is true. And that's kind of where I'm focusing my energies and trying to write and provide for. But everything we see on TV, everything we see in the news, it's all choreographed. It's all decided well ahead of time. They'll bring this meme in. They'll bring that meme in. Everybody will talk about it. I was on a lake last week on my boat and with some friends, and there was just the lake was just so crowded. And then about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, there was no boats on the lake. And I'm like, what the heck just happened? Well, it was the 7th game of the NBA, and Golden State was playing. Everybody went home to get in front of their TVs from playing outside on the lake. That's the kind of power in just a microcosm of the macrocosm these people have around the world. And since we're one world now and all the information goes around the world, it's much easier for them to control the world meme. So now this week Putin is the bad guy, and next week ISIS is the bad guy, and then after that we'll bring in this and that. It's all by design. Bruce had a really good thing on his website with the alleged Pulse shootings, and it shows a video from 4 years ago that included the Pulse nightclub in the video called My Pet Goat. Wow. You just can't make this stuff up, you know?
Why would they do that? For what purpose? So why, we look at this, like a lot of these false flags, and the Pulse would be a very good example, and looks really sloppy. You see people, you see law enforcement guys smiling. You see them carrying wounded back to the Pulse instead of away from the Pulse. I have to say that either these people are so incompetent and sloppy and can't follow a script or a playbook, or it's intentional. And I look at it as intentional because then we're all talking about it, and then we're arguing about it, and then we're going to go to all the people that are not in the know, and we're going to say, hey, look what happened over here. Look at this Pulse night, and they're going to get slapped down.
You're absolutely right, Bruce. I mean, just take this one example. We're digressing here a little bit, but you're on a very good point. There was an article, I guess, or a video that came out maybe 2 days ago. It was Andrew Napolitano, right? Judge Andrew Napolitano, and he had said that nobody had died inside the Pulse until 5:15 when the SWAT team came in. Okay? That clearly contradicted the story that was put out there before he made that statement on television. And so then what happened was the entire alternative research, conspiracy research world just converged on that, and that became the topic du jour. That became what everybody was talking about, trying to surmise and understand what was going on, why he said what he said. This invalidates the story that was given by the police before he made that statement, and so on. And so now what happens is everybody is distracted and everybody is spinning.
Heads on a swivel, and everybody's taking sides, and it's like a gristmill coming to a complete halt, like the 9/11 truth movement, and it just comes to a dead end.
Right.
And then what are we left with? What are we left with? We're just left with.
Let's set that up too, because if you think about the few months before and the year before, what did we just see a few weeks ago? Well, we saw them come out and say, well, all the public education schools must have transgender bathrooms now, right?
Right.
And then before that, we've got the greatest athlete decathlon named Bruce Jenner becoming Caitlyn Jenner, and all of a sudden he's going to be on the cover of Sports Illustrated, or she, excuse me, or whatever, is going to be wrapped around a flag naked on the cover of Sports Illustrated, and now we have the LBGT whole shooting where all we know, you, me, and everybody else, gets it from a feed on an electronic screen controlled by the powers that be.
Right.
There's a lot of things going all the way back to NASA where it's just been theater. It's a TV show made in a green room. And we all drink the Kool-Aid and say it's true because we saw it, and we never can investigate it. We can never go and talk to the people that were actually there around the nightclub. And so all of this, we can be worked any which way they want us to because we see something on the internet or we see something in the corporate-controlled newspapers, and then we take that as headline truth instead of doing, reading books about it. And then the truth comes out, like after 9/11, a few years later. Well, turns out there was a bunch of drills going on at the exact same time. Why did the greatest force of military with an hour-and-a-half notice in the Pentagon with 32 anti-aircraft missiles surrounding it, why did they defend themselves? Well, the planes were sent out to sea, and there's no video. Oh, we have one little 5-frame video. I mean, it's just, when you start looking back on it, it doesn't make any sense, but the meme has already been set. The headlines are already in people's minds. So then you have to go back and destroy the official story, and it's just people just don't want to go there. They just don't want to hear it.
Well, and even within the alternative research community, there's bickering, right? I mean, they can't agree on 9/11. They can't agree on Sandy Hook. They can't agree. I mean, you have factions that agree with each other, but then you have these standoffs, and there's debating, and there's arguing, and stone throwing, and I mean, even within the folks that are supposedly trying to bring the truth out, they're beating each other up.
Again, it's the oldest trick in the book. It's divide and conquer. And then it comes to a complete standstill, and we look down in our hands, and we say, what do we got? I got nothing. What do you got? Well, I got nothing because we've just faced off against each other, and we've just annihilated. You know who's destroying the truth? In actuality, we end up destroying it amongst ourselves.
That's right.
And that's the Jesuits. They don't have to do it. They set it up. We do it. They spin us like a top. We're like dueling tops, and that's where you see.
And it just got to add to that. I mean, what I get back to in the Wall Street is when I would go to the companies or research analysts and whatnot. One of the points they kept on bringing is you never hear about marketing to companies. When I was in business marketing in school, I asked the professor in my senior year. He says, "Let me get this straight. Marketing is basically mind control." And he said, "You got it." Well, just think about, they have a thing called brain mapping. Obama just authorized $6.5 billion for brain mapping, and they've been doing brain mapping not just every year, but every decade, spending billions and billions of dollars studying between our ears and behind our eyes. Well, what do you think these guys learned over decades and centuries about how man behaves? They know more about us than we do about ourselves, and that's how they win. So again, it's an internal journey to be able to know thyself. In the world of disinformation, in the world of muddied waters, it becomes really hard, and so you start developing, and Mike, I'm sure you're really good at this too, your own intuition for bullshit. You start to get your BS detector really finely tuned, and you can tell right away whether that makes sense or not. You don't even have to go even further. You can tell by the way it's framed. So I think that's the work of higher consciousness now, is just we do our own work, we bring the truth out the best we can, we give people that are on the fringe or at the shore looking out and wanting to know more some fodder and some feed for their thought that they can determine for themselves. And over time, since we will be proven out or it'll be too late, but it's time to get the word out.
How much danger, Jamie or Bruce, do you think that people who are doing work like you guys are doing, I'm doing work with these shows, that are pushing this stuff out there? So is there an imminent downside, or are they just simply not concerned?
Well, let's put it this way. I couldn't put a number of years on it, but in terms of, we talked about time, spans of time. A year to us, they are the master of they're basically like actuaries. When you look at life insurance, for example, actuarial tables for morbidity tables, and they have to plan into the next century. And they look at 100-year spans. I look at this as like a race to, right now it's just a race to the bottom now. I mean, their plans are in full swing. We're at the very end of what their plan is. So I don't think we're much of a threat to them because they've got so many things going. But certainly, you know, I think it's incumbent upon us, Jamie says, I feel spiritually compelled to put this information out there regardless of the circumstances, and so be it, you know, because I know that I'm on the right side here. And by the way, most of the things that we talk about, quite frankly, are, yes, we deviate, but most of the stuff that we gird our conversations around are actually quotes that have already been spoken by others.
Yeah.
So it's really not anything new under the sun. But I think I bring it out. The subject matter at this point in time is new under the sun. And Jamie, what do you think about that?
It's so deep, it's so vast, and we're just at the beginnings of this full disclosure of much hidden truth, that it's just about getting it out there. And if my whole reason for living right now, I'm 59 and a half years old, I've got a 10-and-a-half-year-old son, and my only goal right now is for him to know that I tried. For him and all the children to know that when stuff hit the fan and the news came out about what was going to happen, that I spoke out, that I was there on the front lines trying to bring conscious awareness to others. And whether I succeeded or failed is not what is important. It's that I gave it the best effort I could in the best way I could, because the children in the future, when we see what they have planned for them, they don't have full lives ahead of them. All children. It's just they have the Georgia Guidestones. I don't know if, Mike, you've ever heard of the Georgia Guidestones.
Oh, yeah.
I actually got on a plane and flew there back in 2007 because I just couldn't believe that was true. And so I went there and I looked, and it's 2.5 hours northeast of Atlanta, Georgia. The Georgia Guidestones were put in by a guy named R.C. Christian, who represented a group of unnamed people. And they put in 4 20-foot, 4 to 5 ton monuments of the finest granite in the United States on the same geographic ley lines as pyramids in Giza and Stonehenge and down in Chichen Itza pyramids. So it's a very big earth energy center. And these 10 commandments, as they're called, the Georgia Guidestones or America Guidestones, the first one says, keep the population at 500 million people. That's etched in stone in 8 different languages around the entire Georgia Guidestones. The 10th commandment says, don't be a cancer on this earth, leave room for nature, leave room for nature. This cost tens of millions of dollars back in 1991 to erect. Someone had very, very serious intentions. And on top of this, they put a big cornerstone that was much thicker, and they wrote it in ancient Hebrew, cuneiform, Sanskrit, and hieroglyphics.
Yeah.
And which took a long time to research, but it said, let this be the age of reason. And if you read the Freemasons and whatnot, they're big on reason and stuff. So the connection can be made that there is a play going on to eradicate 93, 4% of the population. And there's a document that you probably heard of called Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars, using food substitutes, using vaccines, using all these different ways to basically, have a mass die-off without any implications, and be able to plausibly deny that they had created it.
Yeah, the slow kill. Yeah.
Slow kill, keep the infrastructure in place. Yep.
Yeah, and that's what they do in Iraq. We invaded Iraq under false pretenses of weapons of mass destruction. Well, where's the outrage that I feel in my soul right now for 2 million Iraqis? I apologize from my country to your country, people, for the death of these people, and then putting depleted uranium, which is going to be deadly for the next, 50,000 years?
Yeah.
I mean, we have done horrendous things around the world to people that we haven't been accountable for. So it's time to start owning up to the real America, the real military operation that run for these other countries or other world powers, that we're the military arm. The City of London is the banking arm, and the Vatican is the religious arm. That's part of their trilateral operation. But we can take our role, and we can do what we can with what we have, and that's That's all you can do right now, and you have to be satisfied with it because it's not going to change tomorrow.
Yeah, the reason why I asked the question, too, is because a lot of folks, they know in their hearts that they should do something, they should say something, but they're afraid. They're afraid that, something's going to happen to them. In fact, I've been asked this question many times. People will say to me, Mike, aren't you a little concerned or afraid about doing these radio shows and talking about the topics that you're talking about with your guests? And I tell them the same thing that you just said, Jamie, what you said perfectly. Look, I have to do something. I don't want to be here having my daughter look at me and say, Dad, what the hell were you doing? She's got her part too. Our kids are going to have their part too. But, you have to, as a parent, as an adult, you have to lead by example. If you're going to sit there in front of the television set, suck down buds and potato chips, and watch ball games, and that's going to be it.
What are you doing?
Exactly. What are you doing? And then 10 years from now, 20 years from now, 30 years, I tell folks, I think it's only a matter of about 20 years. In 20 years, this country, current course and speed, will be destitute. There's no pensions. There's no retirement. There's nothing.
Well, you're a finance guy. I mean, what's 20 trillion? They make the numbers so big to us that we can't even comprehend. We don't know what $1 trillion is, much less 20 trillion.
Right.
But they keep accounting of it. And as long as we are in debt servitude, we can never be free. There used to be a thing called a debt jubilee. I think it was a law passed where you could have debt that could only last for 45 or 50 years, and then all debts were cleared. There's so many changes we can do, but right now the movement is to educate, alert, and inform. I've taken that word fear, which everybody brings up, and they ask me the same question, why aren't you afraid? Yeah, but I'm doing it anyway, and if they, I tell people my goal, if I get really good at this truth movement, is to get a bullet in the head, like Martin Luther King, like Gandhi. I mean, all these guys that were big truthers that last well into past their lifetimes, they all got knocked off for telling the truth. And sadly, that's kind of like our goal right now, is to really stand up and be accountable and be responsible. And the word responsible means the ability to respond. Hope comes from action. It does not come from wanting somebody else to do it for you. My mother said, well, Jamie, why are you doing this? Why are you putting your life at risk? Why are you putting your son's life at risk, is what she said to me. And I said, I'm doing it because I can't ask anyone else to do it.
Yes.
It has to come from me. It can't come from somebody else. Everybody has to make that decision. But if you choose to look away, you're a coward. I'm sorry. You have no courage in your soul. You're going to go wherever you're going to go. But those of us that step up in the plate, I believe we're only using 10 to 15% of our brain, higher consciousness power. We'll come back the next time at a better place because we did this work. This is the work that's the most important work on earth right now. And the three of us and all the other truth seekers and people speaking out, I just take my hat off to you guys. I respect you just immensely. But the rest of you that have this information, that are turning your backs while children are being killed for ritual sacrifices for these pedophiliacs, and I'm not even sure they're human. I have no sympathy for these people when they start complaining that, oh, well, my life isn't good because now I lost my house or lost this. It's a much bigger picture than you folks. This is a much bigger deal. We're talking about these powers that want to wipe us off the face of the earth. We're in this war that is an undeclared war where they've said what they want to do, and the sheep will just keep sleeping. So I came up with this word fear, and I said, pick your fear. So which fear do you guys pick? So you can either flee everything and run, face everything and respond, facts, evidence, academia, and research, false evidence, or appearing real. So you can pick your fear. So you don't have to take that word fear. You can choose to act. It can become a positive word, fear. And that's the jujitsu, is taking their energy, flipping it around, and becoming empowered by it. I mean, that's the game I play.
Well, another way to look at it too, Jamie, is this is coming, and they're going to force this, and it's coming to your doorstep, whether you like it or not. Right, Mike?
That's right.
And right now, at this very moment, we still do have a choice. We have a choice to stand up and do what each one of us, whatever that is, especially just turning your mental attention, if that's the least you can do and add to the collective consciousness, turn your mental attention towards this and become aware and become acquainted with it, and that will spread. It doesn't take very much. It doesn't take very many people either, as we've learned it from history in the past. It doesn't take much to spin the wheel.
You know, let me ask this question here. This is something that I think perplexes a lot of people, because we talk about these secret societies, we're talking about the Jesuits, we talk about the Freemasons, just name the secret society. When this country was founded, it seemed like it was all set up to be a pretty good deal. I mean, at least that's what a lot of people believe on the surface, that, you know, when the United States was formed, that it was going to be consist of freedom and liberty and sovereignty and so on. What happened? I mean, were the founders really good guys, or were we duped? Were they part of the ultimate scheme that we're seeing unfold today, manifesting today? What's the deal? Do you have any thoughts on that?
We had one Jesuit was one of the 56 signers of the Constitution, which everybody loves to cite as our freedom and the new grand experiment of freedom for the individual without rulership of king or church. Well, give me a break. We the people meant the 56 guys that signed the contract. That was the contract. When they signed it, you didn't free the slaves. You didn't allow women to vote. You didn't not take the Native American property away from them. It was 7% of the population. It was the richest guys in the United States making their own rules about how we, the people that signed this document, want to go forward. And so they sold it. If you take the new $100 bill, this is really interesting. It was ready to come out in 2009, and it released in 2013 of October. Half of the new $100 bill is in gold. Okay, we're $20 trillion in debt. They come out with a new $100 bill where half of it is in gold. Well, if you look at that document that everybody carries around in their pocket, it's in the background is written the second paragraph, not the first, of the Declaration of Independence that says we in political bands no longer bind us and we can form a new government. 9/11 is, maybe you guys have seen it or not, but 9/11 is on the back of the $5, $10, $20, and $50 bills.
Yeah.
These guys, they own everything. They write the documents, then they tell you a story, and then we all believe that we have this freedom of power. But try walking across a border and see how far you go. Try not having Obamacare. Worst health care in 40 countries we have, highest cost, and everybody's got to have it now. That's socialism. I mean, they're not providing better health care. They're not doing it. The doctors are there to make profits. They're not there to heal. They should be trying to make people not get sick, not treat them after they get sick. A dentist should be trying to treat you prevent you from getting cavities, not treating the cavities, but that's the only way they make money. So the whole system is set up as a deception, in my view. This country was set up as a grand experiment by the Jesuits to destroy us, destroy freedoms, and they're going to come down really hard on the United States to be an example for the rest of the world. Never, ever question their authority. Dick Cheney had the famous line, make sure you stomp out all the grass that grows through the concrete, or sooner you're going to have to mow more lawns. That's the way they think. They're in power. I've seen Wall Street where this money is no object. They have no empathy for humans. It's just their club.
I agree with Jamie, and it is. You took the words out of my mouth, Jamie. It's a grand experiment, and we were built to be the hammer to bring in the new world order, and everybody else is a nail. And we've been at war 93.7% since the founders founded this country. 93.7% since the creation of the United States, we've been in wartime.
Yes,
no country. Yes, and in I believe it's the last 30 years, we've estimated to have killed, I think, 23 million people, and that probably is low. And we are oblivious to it. What do we do to the Native Americans?
We killed them all, and whoever was left put them on a postage stamp somewhere and called it a reservation.
Right. Well, a lot of those were Jesuit mercenaries coming in, cleaning it out. That was.
What we do to the Japanese in World War II in this country? We put them in internment camps. But the symbolism is where I get a lot of this information from. The word fasces, which they say came from Mussolini. Fasces, F-A-S-C-E-S, is a bundle of rods containing an axe with a blade projecting. This goes back to the Roman consuls back in the Caesar days, where they took the bundling caning rods with the axeman's axe sticking out of it, and when they made new laws, they walked around Rome and Italy, and whoever made the laws on it said, do you have any problem with our new laws? Well, if you look on the back of the dime, you'll see what they call Lycor rods, the bundling rods, the FASI rods, on the back of the dime. You'll see this on Lincoln Memorial on the chair he's sitting on. You will see this in the Congressional House where the president gives his State of the Union speech. You will see fasces, these bundling rods of torture and control on each side of the dais that the president gives his State of the Union speech. It's right in front of us that they are telling us that we have the symbol of power over life and limb, and the stick symbolized punishment by whipping, and the axe head is by execution by beheading. It's so in our face that we just can't even see it sometimes.
Have you ever seen the movie Hidden in Plain Sight? The documentary?
That's excellent, isn't it?
It's excellent, yeah.
Yeah, the guy just basically took Google Earth and he connected all the sites around the world, and he showed how Washington, D.C. was set up as a pentagram.
Right.
I live out near San Francisco. It was amazing how to see San Francisco with Angel Island, Treasure Island, and then the ever-present phallic penis called the Obelisk, which is the Transamerica building, which just happens to be 555 feet, the same size as the Obelisk in Washington, D.C., or 666 feet.
Right.
Same one they have that they took from Rome that they have in the city of London, the same one they have in the Vatican, and then they put the female Vesica Pisces around it to symbolize the male penetrating the female, just like they had Apollo, the sun god, go to Isis, the moon Apollo, allegedly, and that's the male sun god going to impregnate the Isis. It's all right in front of us, but it's for those with eyes to see and ears to hear. But that movie, Hidden in Plain Sight, showed really to me how many centuries that they have been laying out and mapping our world. It's fascinating from a research perspective, and it's really discomforting when you understand that this whole country and most countries were set up under their rule.
And when we say they, Jamie, we're referring to the Jesuits, correct?
And the families that run them.
And the families that run them.
And the papacy in general.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I just want to tie it back so that when we talk about they, folks don't resort back to, the confused state of, I don't really know who those people are.
Remember, the Jesuits were suppressed after the Counter-Reformation because they were considered too evil and they had too much power, and they were suppressed, and they went underground temporarily and then came back out again. They were officially reinstated in 1812, and they're never leaving.
They never
and
left.
They never left, and that's where the Illuminati was created as just a cover to keep doing what they're doing. And that's where people get mixed up about the Illuminati. They don't really understand that, but that's just Jesuits.
Okay.
Another front.
Right, and Andrew Weishaupt came to the United States in 1776, which you see the Roman numerals on the back of the Masonic dollar bill that was brought by Freemason Franklin Delano Roosevelt. There was, I think, 8 Freemasons that signed the Constitution. And Mike, have you ever heard of the Entity?
No.
The Entity is an intelligence operation out of the Vatican that controls the CIA, M16, the Mossad, the Russian intelligence services. And so you ask, well, how is this all coordinated? How can they do this all? Well, the Entity, there's a book by Eric Frattini called The Entity, 5 Centuries of Vatican Espionage that everyone should read. And this is how they gather all their information. This is why they use the Seeing Eye. And it's called the St. Leopold Foundation is the great Jesuit spy system. And so we think that the CIA is running the show. No, they answer to the Entity. The Vatican and the whole operation of the Society of Jesus, they call themselves the establishment. So they have these big, big overarching names, but underneath them is all the Freemasons, all the Opus Dei, the P2, the Pilgrim Society, and then some of these secret societies we hear about, and then these alleged think tanks like the Trilateral Commission, the Bilderberg Group, Council of Foreign Relations. Those are the names we see. But again, there's this pyramid like 7, 8, 10 rungs behind these that we hear about and a lot of people are starting to learn about. So it's just constant digging to learn more. But the Entity is the intelligence operation gathering service that puts out to all the other intelligence agencies around the world. And I tell people it's a one world government already. There's not a new world order being created. It's an old world order with their agenda calling it the new world order. But if you look at the powers that be, They have the World Health Organization, the Bank of International Settlements. All of these are world organizations. NAFTA just got TPP.
United Nations.
NAFTA. All of these are trade agreements of world law. This is and the reason I know that we're under a one world government is very, very simple. Your debt follows you wherever you go in the world. So that right there shows you that we have a world banking system, a world debt system for collection. So it's hard for people to think that the United States is not a country, but it's very simple when you look at the colors of our flag, the same as Britain, the same Russia, Soviet Union goes down and they come up with their new flag. What's their color? Red, white, and blue. What's the color of the French flag? Red, white, and blue. What's the color of the British flag? Red, white, and blue. Chile, Puerto Rico. You go around the world and you look at all the flags, or you look for red crosses. Many of these countries could have chosen any color if they were independent, but they seem to all choose the same exact colors. What a coincidence theory,
Well, let me just say this has been a fabulous discussion. We're bumping up against 2 hours, guys, and what I want to do is to reconvene us for another show in the very near future, and we can continue the discussion because this has been excellent. It really has been. I've learned a lot. You guys have really done some great research. Websites and social media and YouTube channels. Where can people find out more about your work and your research? Jamie, you want to start first?
Sure. I have 3 websites. One is called Taboo, Taboo, T-A-B-U, and that stands for Towards a Better Understanding, tabooblog.com. The second site I have is AVVI, Apple Victor Victor Ida.info, and that's a vaccine information website, just both sides of the story, just presenting information, what's in vaccines, did you know vaccines? Who created vaccines, Mike, real quick? A Jesuit.
Okay, that was going to be my wild guess.
Yeah, and the
Preferred
third
method of
website is called Plain Truth, A-P-L-A-N-E, truth.info, and then I have a YouTube site, a plaintruth.info website that I'd love for everybody to come visit and share information and pass it on if you find it relevant. And I really appreciate you, Mike, having us on your show.
Oh, absolutely. And all your websites are great. I've been to the ball, and I love your YouTube channel. Love it. So I've subscribed for a long time. Bruce, how about yourself?
The Modern Gnostic. So it's modern, Gnostic, moderngnostic.com. I have another website called the Geocentric Gnostic.com. And the Modern Gnostic YouTube channel, which is sort of a nascent YouTube channel. Don't do Facebook. Stay away from that. So those are the 3 places that you can find me. And again, I'd like to thank you, Mike. This has been, I can't believe we're bumping up against 2 hours, how fast this has moved.
Yeah, it went quick. It went real quick.
Because we can go off on a million. There's so much that is revolving off of this. It's when you really see the bigger picture that everything seems to rotate off of this like centrifugally, but we're talking about the axis of the centrifugal wheel.
Yeah.
And you can see how it all branches out, and we can bring it right up to the current day. It's almost like there isn't. It's what happened 300 years ago is as relevant today or more than it is than you'd ever think.
Well, and maybe when we come back, one of the shows that we can talk about the shape of the Earth.
That would be nice.
And we can connect the Jesuits to the story.
Yeah.
That'd be great if we could do that. I'd love to do that.
Okay, yeah, we'll do that. All right, you guys, look, it's been a great discussion, really. I really appreciate connecting with you. Jamie, thank you so much for emailing me and saying that let's connect. All right, gentlemen, have a great evening.
How quick.
Flag. It had nothing to do with Betsy Ross. Hey folks, welcome to another video from A Plain Truth. Today I want to follow through on the last piece we did on presidents and pedophiles and how they keep the puppets in line by having major league dirt on them from various disgusting sexual activities. And I hope you'll view that, because people that vote have no clue this is going on. They have no clue their vote doesn't count either. But that's another subject. Before we get into it, though, I want to thank you for all your views. Today is my 1-year anniversary of launching this YouTube channel at A Plain Truth, and we're over 1.4 million views as people are waking up and hungry for knowledge. And this is a collective consciousness. We're all awakening at the same time, so we should be celebrating with each other. It can be very lonely going down this road, but we're not alone. I'm connecting with some wonderful people. I'm losing friends, but I'm gaining others that are awakening. And try not to judge those that aren't awakening, and be angry with them, because we were there once too, right? So anyway, so let's get into it today. Presidential bloodlines, and we're going to trace them all the way back across the pond. Well, everybody has a story told that the East Indian Tea Company came over, and we dressed up as Indians from a Freemason lodge, and we threw the tea into the Boston Tea Party. And that started the no taxation from the British and broke away. That started the independence movement. And then the guys got together at the Congressional Congress, and it was either Franklin or one of the guys, Washington, said we're going to hang together or hang separately to fight the British. And 1812, War of Independence, we declare our independence, and we're going to start this new country with we the people, which is only 7% of the white folks, the richest white men that owned land. It didn't include women, didn't include Native Americans, didn't include blacks they brought over in slave ships. Just included the 7% of the white guys, we the people, but nobody wants to talk about the Constitution like that. But let's talk about flags, because flags are symbols, and symbols represent the icons of what we are and who we are, and very important. The flag proudly waved as the banners, the bombs bursted in air, as the song goes, right? Well, guess what our little design looks like? I mean, here we are, and can you imagine the conversation that they had with Thomas and Samuel Adams and Ben Franklin and these guys when they decided to design the new country's flag? And it's just another lie that Betsy Ross designed the flag. It had nothing to do with Betsy Ross. It's just another story lie. And they said to Betsy, hey, Betsy says to him, hey, what kind of flag do you guys want? We can start our own country. We can do whatever we want. And they thought about it, and they came back to her and they said, hey, you know what? The British have some awesome colors. Why don't we just copy their flag and maybe leave out the cross, because people might think that's the Knights of Malta. We know Columbus had the cross, the Red Cross going. We know the British have the Red Cross going. We know that Switzerland has the Red Cross going. So maybe we should leave that out so people don't get the wrong idea. But those British colors are really cool. Well, let's do that. Well, folks, did you know that the East Indian Tea Company had almost the same exact motif? In fact, their flag of our ancestors is the same flag as the East Indian Tea Company, the ones we were supposed to overthrow. Here's the United States of America flag from 1775 to 1777. They didn't change it much, folks. And if you look through the flags in history, this is the flags of Washington, D.C. Do you get the idea? The red and white stripes, the stars, same as the British. And the red and white and blue motif is carried out in all these flags of Chile, of France. I mean, you just go down the list of all these countries with all these flags in here, red, white, and blue. Now, we have an international government in place, the World Health Organization and all the Bank of International Settlements that controls all the central banks and the Federal Reserve. So it's complete fallacy that the United States is independent in any way. And here the flags are all designed in red, white, and blue. Is that just another coincidence, or are we being played? All right, so let's get on to the family bloodlines and start looking into the history of the presidents, all presidents having the exact same blood lineage as their ancestors across the pond in France and England.
In either of those first two books, though, who knew you and Dick Cheney cousins?
Listen, I don't think I'm going to family reunion. I don't know how I'll be greeted. But no, these folks have been doing all these genealogies on me, and
right.
They've found all sorts of strange connections.
This is what did you make of that story? For those who don't know this, so Lynn Cheney, the vice president's wife, has been doing some genealogy connected to her latest book, and lo and behold, way back, 8 generations ago,
or
you and Mr. Cheney apparently have some distant relative in connection. What did you make of that story when it came?
I actually knew about it because somebody had done some genealogy before, and they had sent it to me, this long sheet, and had all these famous names, Mark Twain and this and that and the other, and then Dick Cheney, and I took a pause.
It's a great thing for history.
George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, William Howard Taft, and President Barack Obama. One young girl traced them all back to one common ancestor.
They're all cousins and all grandsons of John Lackland.
It's the first family tree of its kind, pouring through more than 500,000 names for months. 12-year-old Bridge Ann D'Avignon discovered that all the U.S. presidents, except Martin Van Buren, are related to the former King of England, John Lackland Plantagenet, signer of the Magna Carta in 1215.
So, since genealogy is such a hot topic, let's get into the family bloodlines of the presidents and how can they be all related. Is this a conspiracy, a coincidence, or are we all related to everybody else? Well, since genealogy determines our bloodlines of our ancestry and differentiates our family trees from others, the argument that we're all related to somebody way down the road is ridiculous. So here we see President Bush and all the relations in his bloodline he has to Princess Di, to Madonna, Brad Pitt, Barack Obama. You heard him talk about Dick Cheney being related, ninth cousin once removed. So let's get into this a little more. David Icke has this to say: if it really is the land of the free, and if, as claimed, anyone can really become president, if you got billions of dollars and the connections with the bankers, you'd be fairly expected the 43 presidents from George Washington to Bush would express that genetic diversity. The President of the United States are as much a royal dynasty as anything in Europe from whence these bloodlines came. If you ever wondered why John Kerry, Dick Cheney, and Bush the Clintons all never go out of office, why do the Bushes, Reagan, Allen Greenspan, Giuliani, General Wesley Clark, General Caspar Weinberger, all make it a point to England to be knighted by the Queen by the highest royal order of their service, being service to the Queen, folks, and they get knighted for it. So, common grandfather to all is King John, the signer of the Magna Carta. Came across a researcher from Ancestry.com named Tim Dowling on a site reproduced below. Mr. Dowling is connected to the trees of all U.S. presidents to the Plantagenet King John circa 1200 A.D. It should be noted that Americans whose ancestors came from continental Europe in the 19th century are unlikely to easily delineate descent from Charlemagne in their background. There was a separation of classes in Europe, and the blood of the rulers seldom flowed legitimately into the blood of nobility and commoners. This is from Jewels of the Crown. And also it's been revealed that Charlemagne could be a made-up historical figure as well, so just be careful on that name. America declared its independence from the York monarchies in 1776. How is it possible that every single president has descended from European monarchs? The Americans have always owned and governed by the same royal families of Britain and Europe that conventional history states as being among those defeated during the wars of the so-called independence. Michael Vazarian. Bush is closely related to the King of Albania and his kinship with every member of the British royal family in the House of Windsor. Related to 20 British dukes, 13 cousins of British Queen Mother and her daughter Queen Elizabeth. He is a 13th cousin once removed from Prince Charles. On and on. Since we know the United States of America is a DC corporation owned by the Crown of England, and the fact that this country has been ruled by maritime law under the Holy See of the Vatican, it is not too far a stretch at all to understand that every single appointment of U.S. presidents are related and carry only a negative blood type traced back to their ancestral royal bloodlines. So anybody who says that we're all related, the negative bloodline is a rare type. Most people's blood types are O types, and we'll get into that a little bit too. So you saw in the 12-year-old girl that documented the relationship and did the, quote, discovery that all the presidents were related, but I think it was Van Buren, the one that she didn't find. Well, if you don't believe her, how about the New York Times in 1988? Quote, going by the statistics of the past, Mr. Bush, the next president, this is from a 162-year-old directory of British nobility from Burke's Peerage Ltd. Limited, a very prestigious genealogy company for 162 years. He released a report tracing the vice president's family to the 1400s. William Ward found that Mr. Bush has more connections to the British and European royalty than any president of the United States. Queen's 14th cousin. Of the 40 American presidents, 13 have had a direct connection to European royalty. American presidents have been at least 6 times more likely to have royal blood than people who elected them. Quote, these genes or chromosomes for leaders come forward whether it's kings or presidents. You cannot hold back the genes. Book steerage traced the Bush family tree of the 1400s. He's a direct descendant of King Henry VII and one of Charles II's mistresses, and Henry VIII's younger sister Mary, who married King Louis XII of France. American roots, Charles II's mistress Barbara Villiers lived from 1641 to 1706, cousin of the vice president's great-great-great-great-great-grandmother. According to Burks, George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, John Quincy Adams were all related to Edward I. What are the odds? In the 20th century, Theodore Roosevelt and Franklin Delano Roosevelt were descended from the Dutch nobility. Jimmy Carter has kinship ties to noble Scottish and English families, while President Reagan is a direct descendant of the 11th century High King of Ireland, Brian Boru. By placing bloodline members of both sides of the Americans' faux political dichotomy, the old monarchs have guaranteed their right to the throne under the guise of democratic elections. So you can go on, and I'll put this article I wrote a while ago in the show notes, and you can click on all these links in here and see how they're all related. Again, from the New York Times, I believe this is, President Barack has family ties to none other than Sarah Palin. Ancestry.com has revealed in the past that Obama is related to investor Warren Buffett and Brad Pitt. He's a distant, also former Alaska governor, Republican vice presidential candidate, is a distant cousin of Franklin D. Roosevelt and Princess Diana. President George Bush is not only the son of President Bush the elder, but he's related to Vice President Cheney and the presumptive next President Obama. This was written a little while ago. Tom Hanks, Marilyn Monroe, Madonna, Celine Dion, Hugh Hefner, all related by blood, negative blood. So I'm not quite sure on this article about the connection between David Rockefeller and the guy that runs Facebook, the young kid, Mark Zuckerberg, who came out of nowhere, Cinderella story, creates Facebook, and now he's a multi-gazillionaire. But this article goes into it. Jacob Greenberg was arrested for possession of marijuana, and this was his mugshot. It was later revealed that he could be indeed the man the world knows as Mark Zuckerberg. His family members include David Rockefeller, a grandfather. A little strange because Rockefeller owns 8% of Facebook. I don't put a lot of faith in that, but I just want to bring that up. Al Gore. Gore's family members weren't exactly peasants. Family tree, again, tied to Charlemagne and 3 Holy Roman empires. Remember, we're under Holy Roman Latin law in our legal system. Remember that Washington, D.C., the name of the land before it was Washington, D.C. in 1871 was named Rome, Maryland, with 7 hills. It was founded by John Carroll, richest man in the country in the 1870s, who founded Georgetown University, the Jesuit, a year before Washington, D.C. Washington, D.C. is a private corporation founded by the Organic Act in 1871, beholden to no other country. It holds our Congress, our president, and our supreme law of the land, Supreme Court, all in this one little area that rules over all of us and we send all our money to. John Kerry. Kerry can almost certainly be traced back to King James I. Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton was born William Jefferson Blythe. How many knows that? Took his stepfather's name as a teenager. The ancestry can trace back to his mother's side to King Henry III. Furthermore, he's related to every Scottish monarch in the British royal family. Bill Clinton's family goes back to William Henry Harrison and Benjamin Harrison, making him related to Gerald Ford and Jimmy Carter. Again, makes him near kin to Richard Nixon and George Bush. What are the odds, folks? According to Burke's Peerage, even according to official genealogy, Bill Clinton is genetically related to the House of Windsor, the present royal family in Britain, to every Scottish monarch, to King Henry III of England and Robert I of France. Burke's Peerage and Barontage and Burke's landed gentry have for 175 years recorded the genealogies of UK and Ireland's titled and landed families. 2004, George Bush ran against John Kerry, and you remember the whole hanging Chad and all that. Well, the reason why Bush was selected and put into the presidency was because his bloodline was a little more pure than John Kerry. Remember, John Kerry's married to the Heinz woman, the Heinz ketchup dynasty, and I'm sure she's probably in the mix as well, in the bloodlines as well. All right, this is from Harold Books Baker Burke's Peerage Publishing in an article in Nexus Magazine. Never in the history of the United States have two presidential candidates been as well endowed with royal alliances. There's always been a significant royal factor in those aspired to the White House. Al Gore, descendant of Edward I, he's also a cousin of First President Nixon. Al Gore does have direct links to the Holy Roman Empire. On and on it goes, folks. Even Bill Clinton and Bob Dole, who opposed each other in 1996, are distant cousins. Father George and wife Barbara Bush are both descendants of Godefroy de Bouillon, who in 1099 led the European noblemen in the successful crusade to capture Jerusalem from the Islamic faith and moved into the King's Palace of the Temple Mount. Let's take a quick sidebar to the Modern Gnostic website and take a little quick look at Barbara Bush here. I got to reduce this down so we can see it, but Barbara Bush is possibly related to one Aleister Crowley, the guy that does the dark magic. Shown here, born Pauline Robinson, whose third child was named Barbara. Most sources divulge little about this woman. We learn more about her husband from Marvin Pierce, the president of McCall Corporation, who published McCall's magazines and Red Book. Let's see if I can reduce this down a little. When Crowley was 50 years old, he was residing in the home of Frank and Nellie O'Hara in Paris. In early 1924, Nellie was visited by her American friend Pauline Pierce. Remember, it's Barbara Bush Nee Pierce. During Pauline's visit, Crowley underwent what he termed a supreme ordeal initiation to Masonic Ipsissimus grade, the highest magical achievement in this order. The initiation rite, choosing one or more experienced attendants charged with arousing and exhausting him sexually by every means possible, employing every artifice and stimulant. In that place and time, Nellie and Pauline were the most suited for this task. Pauline returned to America, and on June 8, 1925, 8 months after Crowley's supreme ordeal, Pauline gave birth to a daughter she named Barbara. Barbara grew up to marry George Bush, who later became president of the United States. So is Crowley the president? Is Crowley the father of Barbara Bush? All right. So back to the bloodlines. Now we can see. Let me get this back up again here. The same bloodline also includes key Scottish families, Lord Galloway and the Commons, Mary Louise of Austria, who married Napoleon Bonaparte. On and on it goes, country after country. This bloodline connects into every surviving royal family in Europe, including King Juan Carlos of Spain and the Dutch, Swedish, and Danish royal family lines. King Carlos of Spain is very highly connected to the Jesuits and the Knights of Malta. All right, so in the blood, this is all about the blood. And I don't know how many people know that blood is mentioned more often than any other word in the Bible except God. There's a connection between the blood and the gods. In one day, your blood travels 12,000 miles. Your heart beats around 35 million times per year. Your heart pumps 1 million barrels of blood during the average lifetime, enough to fill 3 super tankers. Our human bodies are amazing. Let's take care of them, folks. All right, you've heard of the blue bloodline. Where does that come from? Negative blood, especially Rh negative, has a higher copper content than positive iron blood, which is where blue blood actually comes from. Bush was awarded the presidency in 2004 because he had more blue blood than Gore. The idiom originates from ancient and medieval societies of Europe and distinguishes an upper class whose superficial veins appear blue through their untanned skin from a working class of the time. It was the Spaniards who gave the world the notion that an aristocrat's blood is not red but blue. The Spanish nobility started taking shape around the 9th century in classic military fashion, occupying land as warriors on horseback. They were to continue the process for more than 500 years, clawing back sections of the Peninsula and Moorish empires. It's demonstrated his degree by holding up his sword to display the filigree of blue-blooded veins beneath his pale skin, and it was proof that his birth had not been contaminated by the dark-skinned enemy. So look at all these presidents with negative blood types that we know about, and if you Google blood types on presidents, you're not going to find very much. They keep it very private. Eisenhower, Kennedy, Nixon, Clinton, Bush. What are the odds? Only negative and negative blood can keep a pure bloodline intact. Any positive type blood will make it impure and break the lineage. It is believed by many that all presidents are negative blood type. And so you can see how the negative passes on the blood type, but once you introduce a positive, it distorts or ruins the pure bloodline. The Son of God said that the daughters of humans were beautiful and they married any of them they choose. So this is getting into the Bible where they say the gods came down and impregnated the humans and created a cross line of humanity that is in power today of a ruling family. Have you noticed that the royal family has only sons, and the last 3 presidents, Obama, Bush, and Clinton, have only daughters? Rh negative, a very special blood type of unknown origin. The Rh factor is the rhesus of a monkey blood. If your blood tests positive for this, you have a factor in your blood. If you test negative, you do not have factor in your blood. The Rh factor is a protein found in the human blood that is directly related to the rhesus monkey. There are very few aberrations. It rarely changes. Now here's the key, folks. Only 15% of humans have Rh negative blood. So all of these that claim that, oh, well, you know, if you go back far enough, we all have related people that relate to everybody. No, not if your blood's Rh negative. Destroys that argument right here. There's evidence that suggests the Rh negative blood group may have appeared about 35,000 years ago. Northern Spain and southern France is where you find some of the highest concentration Rh negative factor in the Basque people. Another original group are the Eastern Oriental Jews. In general, about 40 to 45% of Europeans have negative group blood. Only about 3% of African descendant. Obama's half black, folks. He's half white, too. So you take that into the factor. And about 1% of Asian or Native American descendants has the Rh negative group. That's why we don't have any of those type of people put in office. People with Rh negative blood group, they have some have extra vertebrae, higher than average IQ, more sensitive to vision and other senses, lower body temperature, higher blood pressure, psychic intuitive abilities, predominantly blue, green, or hazel eyes, red or reddish hair, increased skin sensitivity. Here's a big one: cannot be cloned. The appearance of Rh negative blood do not follow the usual evolutionary path. In fact, evolution would seem to be ruled out as a possible cause of the anomaly. This would lead credence that Rh negative factor was introduced from an outside source. Now you can get into Stitchin's work and the whole Anunnaki and coming down to mine the gold and all that. That's just another story for another time. We're going to wrap it up here in a little bit. 13 bloodlines of the Illuminati, and you can get to the 13 satanic bloodlines that are derived from these, but you recognize the names as DuPont, Kennedy, Onassis, Rockefeller, Rothschild, and the like. Why do we have many in power who make the pilgrimage to England to grovel at the foot of the Queen to be knighted? Reagan was made an honorary Knight Grand Cross of the Most Honorable Order of the Bath, the highest honor that Britain gives to Americans, because he was servicing the needs of the British Empire, folks. The City of London is where the money goes. The Vatican is where the religion is run. And the U.S., Washington, D.C., is the military operation. And it's been this way for a long, long time. Now, the original 13th article of the amendment in the Bill of Rights was amended in 1868, I believe. But originally, they did not allow any nobility to be president. So they had to get rid of this because every president was part of the nobility. And it said, if any citizen of the United States shall accept, claim, receive, or retain any title, nobility, or honor without the consent of Congress, and accept and retain any present, pension, office of any kind whatsoever from any empire, king, prince, or foreign power, such person shall cease to be a citizen of the United States. So the breach of the 13th Amendment came bowing from the head, not to the waist of Queen Elizabeth. Sir Rudy Giuliani joined Billy Graham, Steven Spielberg, IBM CEO Lou Gessner, Ronald Reagan, Norman Schwarzkopf, the head of the Iraq I War, Desert Storm, and other nightly relics of the British attempt to persuade Washington that special relationships between the two countries mean something more than what Tony Blair is doing what he's told. However, as Sir Rudy received his Gong Medal from the British Queen, he had a more relevant role as a model as an honorary Knight Commander of the most excellent order of the British Empire. Now, do you remember World Trade Center 7? We had Sir Rudy's command center was sitting up there on, I think it was the 36th floor. That was destroyed when the World Trade Center came down 20 minutes in advance told on its own footprint in a little over 10 seconds, 47-story building not hit by any planes. It also housed all the information for Enron and a bunch of FBI and Secret Service rooms or floors as well. George Bush appointed Knight Grand Cross of Honorable Order of the Bath. Again, why are they honoring the United States? Why are they doing this? And it goes on and on. Tom Foley, Speaker of the House, United States Representative, member of the Order of the British Empire. Alan Greenspan, who ran our money system. The Federal Reserve is no more federal than Federal Express. Created in 1913, it's a private enterprise, made $77 billion in 2012 in net profits. It's a corporation. It's not beholden to anything in the United States government, Treasury. It gets printed. It prints money at interest for the United States. So the more debt we get, the more money they make. Greenspan got knighted for that. And then we get into Michelle Obama and her white ancestry, which I'm not going to go into. Today, genealogy ranks only second to porn as the most searched topic online. So here's just a few more famous people who were knighted by the Queen. Bill Graham. Why would Bill Graham, an evangelist, be knighted by the Queen? Paul McCartney, of course. Isaac Newton. What did he do? Well, he created the whole round ball Earth momentum gravity not weight theory that everybody takes in today. Bill Gates. Well, who's Bill Gates, right? Vaccine depopulation. Arthur C. Clarke, the man who wrote all, notice the satellite dish in the back. He started all the fiction about the fake space and all that. Alfred Hitchcock, the movies. These are all Americans. A lot of these are Americans, folks. Bob Hope. Why are so many Americans being knighted by the Queen? Because they're being of service to the crown. All right? So let's keep that in mind. So here's what I was referring to. After 10 generations, or about 250 years, the average person will have 1,024 descendants. Between 10 and 15 generations, the inflection point, the number of your ancestors explodes to most of the population living in a specific part. But again, Rh negative bloodline, less than 15% of the population, folks. Others with the same ancestry as the presidents: Justin Bieber, Beyonce, Alison Morissette, Madonna, Shania Twain, Ben Affleck, Samuel Adams, John Hancock, John Wayne, John Adams, Matt Damon. And I'll put these in the show notes of the rest of these, people that are all just related to each other. Angelique Jolie, she's with the Trilateral Commission, and you don't get in power. George Clooney, related to Abraham Lincoln. So I'll put these in the show notes. That's all I got for now. Please pass the word on. These are not elections, they're selections. We've been run, and the show has been governed for a very, very long time from across the pond, from England and France, who are run by the Vatican and the Jesuits and the Society of Jesus. So please help educate others once you educate yourself, and let's end this madness, all right? Peace out. We'll catch you on the next one. Take care.